The first spark that ignited his dream of becoming an actor was a tree he played in a kindergarten play. He simply stood motionless while the adults cheered and praised him. The camera flashes blinded him with a constant glare. The deafening applause, smiling parents, and general excitement left a lasting impression on him. For him, a little boy, this was all new. After that, he stubbornly followed the path of an actor, holding tightly to his tree-like image which he had portrayed as a child. Well, as he grew up, he encountered difficulties. One day, Kim Hyun-soo was severely scolded for not giving his all, and his superiors thought that what he showed on stage was all he was capable of. Kim Hyun-soo apologized and asked to try again. The crew was already indignant. They couldn't understand who brought this idiot onto the stage. One of the men said that the actor did not know the basic rules of behavior, and in general anyone could have stumbled, not in the way that Kim Hyun-soo himself did. The director was also angered by the fact that the actor asked to reshoot everything again before the order was given, and this was the height of impudence. Kim Hyun-soo didn't know what to do with himself. He was incredibly ashamed and hurt that he had failed the task once again. After the unsuccessful shoot, Kim Hyun-seo went to one of the local bars. He immediately ordered himself some alcohol and drank the glass, after which he sighed heavily, loudly slamming it on the table. Kim Hyun-soo didn't even dare wash off his clown makeup, and sitting alone at the table, he reasoned out loud that perhaps he should have thrown himself at the director's feet and begged him for another chance. He wasn't bothered by the leering stares of the other patrons. Some kids pointed at him, calling him weird. But he continued talking to himself, cursing at how just when he should have been making an impression he'd stumbled. Soon Kim Hyun-soo noticed the sidelong glances of other visitors at him, and it dawned on him. He remembered that he hadn't even washed off his makeup and was now even more disgraced in front of a large audience, and covered his face with his palms out of shame and despair. At that moment he even doubted himself and decided that he was most likely untalented and had not been able to achieve anything in 28 years. He was an aspiring actor, increasingly convinced that he was simply unemployed. After graduating from the theater department of the local university, he tried to use the connections he made there to get on stage, but no one recognized his acting. He didn't hear any praise or even criticism. Everyone was completely indifferent to him, as his appearance and acting were simply mediocre. He understood that his failures lay precisely in his mediocrity. He couldn't stand out from the vast crowd of aspiring actors like himself. He understood, of course, that there were actors who remained in the shadows for 10, 20, and even 30 years only to finally gain worldwide recognition, but he doubted that he would be able to do the same. Kim Hyun-soo eavesdropped on a conversation at the next table. One of the men was discussing some great actor. Kim Hyun-soo realized they were talking about an actor from a daily drama. He decided to listen in on the conversation. Everything around seemed to freeze, and only this dialogue about a successful actor existed, which Kim Hyun-soo seemed to have given up hope of becoming. The man at the next table admitted that he only watches this drama because of this actor, because his acting was so good that every time he transformed into the character he got goosebumps. Kim Hyun-soo thought that he would really like to be like this actor and for people to talk about him at every step. He would like to return to the times when his father smiled with all his heart and his mother applauded with joy, and become someone who conquers people with his acting because he is obsessed with his work. Kim Hyun-soo wanted to be exactly this kind of artist, and these thoughts made him even sadder. But something seemed to click in his head, and he abruptly slammed his glass on the table and shouted that it was not the time to drown his thirst with more alcohol. He began to slap himself on the cheeks to come to his senses, and decided that he should run through the script again instead of wasting his time on suffering. He immediately jumped up and left the establishment where he had become a frequent drinker and numb to his anger. Kim Hyun-soo walked home with the thought that tomorrow he would be even better at acting, because step by step he would become more confident and grow in his skills. He was very motivated and seemed not to see anything around him, because while crossing the road, he did not notice that a truck was rushing straight towards him. It all happened in a single fleeting instant. Kim Hyun-soo didn't even have time to comprehend what had happened. A loud whistling sound of brakes and shouts of passers-by could be heard on the street. Fortunately for Kim Hyun-soo himself, he remained alive, although he experienced extreme fear and looked around with wide-open eyes. He saw how the driver jumped out of the car with an equally frightened look, and at that moment his eyes began to close. He tried to hold on because he wanted to get home as soon as possible to rehearse the script and concentrated on the man running in him, but it was very difficult for him. Nevertheless, Kim Hyun-soo lost consciousness, and when he woke up he saw only concrete walls and asphalt in front of him. Kim Hyun-soo was very surprised and couldn't understand where he was. Kim Hyun-soo raised himself slightly and looked around and saw a girl quickly moving away from him. Then Kim Hyun-soo's body seemed to fly to another place and he watched the girl from the side. Kim Hyun-soo also saw some guy walking behind the obviously frightened girl and smiling contentedly. This guy shouted at the girl when she turned into a dark alley that she shouldn't have gone there. The guy started laughing loudly, noting that it wouldn't help her anyway since the alley ended in a dead end, which made him very happy. In an instant, the guy blocked the girl's path and she began to panic. She began to beg the man to spare her and promised that she would be as quiet as a mouse and not cause him any problems. This clearly confused him. The man's smile disappeared and he asked what the girl meant. He explained that he just wanted to have fun that night and did not understand why the girl was running away from him, immediately assuming that perhaps something was wrong with her because she was behaving quite strangely. The girl backed away from him, realizing he was just playing some kind of game. She tried to convince him she knew nothing and would keep this situation a secret for the rest of her life, but he only moved closer and closer. The girl cried and begged to be left alone. "I promise that I won't tell anyone anything." But this only made the man laugh. A loud laughter echoed through that narrow night alley. A large hammer appeared in the man's hand. He praised the girl and expressed surprise at how she had managed to understand everything. He smiled broadly, noting that it was a sin for a girl to be so smart, and rushed towards her. The girl didn't even have time to scream. She only cringed and froze, expecting the worst. It was a horribly bloody, disgusting scene. Kim Hyun-soo jumped up in horror. He couldn't do anything to stop the criminal. But Kim Hyun-soo suddenly realized he was in a hospital bed. A nurse was nearby, relieved that her patient had finally regained consciousness. Kim Hyun-soo immediately realized that the situation with the girl and the criminal was just a dream, and he was hit by a huge truck and was simply unconscious. When she told the nurse about the truck, she was a little surprised and said that there was no truck, but he just got scared, tripped, and hit his head on the curb. She explained that he had suffered a concussion the day before yesterday and was waking up for the first time after 2 days of being unconscious and so far only being shown rest. Kim Hyun-soo tried to piece the picture together. He believed the nurse and thought he was simply lucky to have been hit and not been hit by a car, but he couldn't understand what happened after that. Suddenly, a terrible phrase involuntarily escaped his lips. He said that chasing that impudent creature after so many years had been very pleasant. The nurse heard this and froze in surprise at being addressed like that. She asked again what the young man meant, but Kim Hyun-soo didn't even realize he'd said anything and looked in surprise at the nurse, who apologized and noted that she hadn't heard him because she'd gotten distracted. She decided to leave this situation and, hurrying to the exit of the ward, asked the young man to simply wait for the professor who was supposed to examine him. Kim Hyun-soo agreed with her and began to think about the dream, which seemed to be real. He clearly remembered the girl's face and every phrase that sounded from the criminal who was pursuing her. He grabbed his head, not understanding why he had such a disgusting dream. He decided that these were the consequences of his injury and the fact that he spent 2 whole days unconscious. Thinking about the time he spent unconscious, he suddenly remembered something very important. Kim Hyun-soo screamed and turned to the nurse, who hadn't yet moved far away, asking where his phone was. The nurse explained that it was on the nightstand next to him. Kim Hyun-soo immediately grabbed it and found that the screen displayed a notification of 62 missed calls. Kim Hyun-soo also saw many messages from Young Jin, who was upset that his friend hadn't picked up his phone for so long. Young Jin thought Kim Hyun-soo was deliberately not picking up or responding to messages, even though he could have said outright that he wanted to quit and leave. Panic overtook Kim Hyun-soo. He realized he'd missed the audition and, what's more, had left his friend with a very bad impression of himself. The first thing he decided to do was call Engin and explain what was the reason for the missed calls and unanswered messages. When Yeonjin picked up the phone, he immediately started swearing loudly and calling Kim Hyun-soo all sorts of names, who dried everything up, apologized, and noted that something happened to him last night. Well, instead of listening to Yeonjin, he became even more angry, noting that a lot had really happened and that Kim Hyun-soo should have shut his mouth and urgently gone to the audition to perform like never before and then run away in all directions. Yeonjin explained that Kim Hyun-soo was not being looked for a replacement and that he should have shown up at the mock-up of the Yeondenbo police station as soon as possible. Upon hearing this rather good news, Kim Hyun-soo immediately jumped out of bed, got dressed, and ran out of the room. All thoughts immediately vanished from his mind. He forgot about the strange dream about his injury and thought only about where he needed to get to. He ran out into the street, and the first thing he did was catch a taxi. Once inside the taxi, he was able to exhale, catch his breath, and think about what he needed to do next. He tried to remember what role he had been assigned and remembered that he was supposed to play the role of murder suspect number 2. After some time, he reached the place where they were waiting for him for the audition. He immediately began to apologize and beg to be forgiven and given a second chance. The director looked very displeased. He was outraged that the young man had apologized even though he had ruined his own future. He brushed off these conversations and emphasized that it was worth doing the job first and then discussing what happened, with which Kim Hyun-soo completely agreed. Kim Hyun-soo was shown where he could sit and read the script and was left alone for a while. He leafed through the script and soon settled on scene number 34, which seemed simple enough to him. The scene involved the protagonist, Detective Jin Young-mi, interrogating a murder suspect to be played by Kim Hyun-soo, who feigned hurt innocence. Most of the dialogue in the scene was done by Jin Young-mi, while Kim Hyun-soo only had 3 lines of text. Kim Hyun-soo thought that if he simply had to express the emotions of someone who was unfairly accused, it would be as easy as pie. But this was a minor role, and minor characters should never stand out. Before Kim Hyun-soo was invited to enter, he thought he should show maximum offense, but not too much. He had to control his emotions and expressiveness so as not to stand out from the overall narrative of the drama. It was a difficult task to blend in with the crowd while highlighting the expressiveness of the main characters. He stood up and, plucking up his courage, walked away with the thought that only by doing what was given to him perfectly could he still hope for advancement. When Kim Hyun-soo entered, the director noted with a slight smile that young people were sometimes late and the young man should not be nervous but should simply try to get it right on the first try. Kim Hyun-soo thought that the director was not consoling him out of kindness but had probably already written him off and wanted to get this matter over with as quickly as possible. Around 3 o'clock the recording started and they announced the first take of scene 34. The girl playing the detective quickly got into her element. She asked the suspect if the face of the man in the photograph was familiar and moved the picture closer to the young man, noting with me that she understood perfectly well that until last year they had been a couple, and he probably really missed the murdered girl. The detective smiled slightly, also noting that the suspect had apparently watched too much drama, and emphasized that it was not the best time to play the silent game since at this point the facts were already simply being stated. According to the script, Kim Hyun-soo was supposed to remain silent and listen attentively to the detective, who agreed to omit well-known points for reasons of convenience and move on to the case. She announced they would get straight to the point and asked her suspect her first question. She wanted to know what he'd been doing near Lee Yun-soo's residence the day before yesterday around 12:30. When the suspect remained silent, the detective smiled even wider, noting that she wanted to show something interesting. She pushed another photo towards him, noting what an amazing time they lived in, that the car recorders were incredibly clear. The detective also noted that sometimes, of course, it was necessary to tinker to find the right car, but searching was my specialty, and therefore she happily spent one sleepless night. The photo showed Cho In-ho, and this made the detective very happy. Kim Hyun-soo brilliantly played a man who had no intention of confessing to or denying his crimes. He looked at the detective with particular insight. The detective then showed a video from the store's security camera that was about a month old. The detective also provided a 2-month-old video from a streetlight camera, as well as a 4-month-old video from the entrance to the apartment complex. She had a wealth of evidence. The detective emphasized that Mr. Inko had apparently been stalking the victim, and I was eager to know the reason for that. Cho In-ho nevertheless replied that everything was not like that at all. The detective noted that the suspect had finally spoken, although the conversation should not have been so difficult. After a short pause, Cho In-ho replied that he was completely innocent. The detective noted with some complacency that all criminals said the same, but the suspect interrupted her, convincing her that the woman was mistaken. You detective did not expect to hear this address at all and were slightly surprised. She glanced at the suspect and something changed within her. She felt a strange sensation that began to make her panic. She couldn't take her eyes off Cho In-ho, who continued to look at her, looking incredibly confident. The detective couldn't figure out what kind of look her suspect had. This seemed to freeze the detective until Cho In-ho called out to her. The suspect repeated that he was not guilty and did not kill Lee Yun-soo. It was clear the suspect was exhausted by these interrogations and was eager to get back to his business. According to the script, he added that he wasn't interested in any old bags. The detective was astonished by Cho In-ho's answer. At this point, a test take was filmed which the director announced. For a brief moment, the girl playing the detective and Kim Hyun-soo looked at each other silently, and the set was also very quiet. The entire film crew was very puzzled by what they saw in the frame. The director himself looked very thoughtful and could not take his eyes off the actors. After a short pause, the director turned to Kim Hyun-soo. Kim Hyun-soo felt a strong sense of unease. He turned to the director and asked what the young man had done in the frame. At that moment, Kim Hyun-soo's anxiety grew even stronger. He began to think his performance had been too bad again. The director didn't answer. He asked the young man to wait in the waiting room and addressed the entire crew, asking them not to touch anything and to stop working. The director became very busy, and in the end his gaze fell on Hyo Yun-jin, who had brought Kim Hyun-soo to the audition and asked him to come over. Kim Hyun-soo couldn't explain what was happening before his eyes. He also couldn't suppress his anxiety, but he had to follow the director's instructions. The director himself, while Kim Hyun-soo was anxiously awaiting the verdict, gathered important people to make some kind of statement. He asked Hyo Yun-jin where he got Kim Hyun-soo, who immediately began apologizing. To his surprise, the director asked him not to apologize, noting that he was truly in complete shock. Hyo Yun-jin felt that his friend had upset the director and continued to apologize for bringing the man onto the set. But then he noted that, if you think about it, he really had nothing to apologize for since his friend had acted quite well. The director asked why the guy thought he needed to apologize unless it was because he was hiding such talent. Hyo Yun-jin noted that his friend was just a college junior he knew and had a rather average acting skill. The director was even more surprised and thought that Kim Hyun-soo could not have had an average level. The director decided to contact Chris, who played the detective, to get her opinion on Kim Hyun-soo. The girl looked confused and replied that she herself had not yet realized how good this man was for the role of a suspect. The director was sure that the girl had definitely felt something and was simply hiding her thoughts for now. The director thought that their performances weren't that different from the script, but the guy he saw wasn't just a question of acting or the tone of his voice. The director was sure there was much more to this guy. He watched the film take over and over again, wishing to catch that very moment that had so captivated him. No one on the film crew understood why the man was so fussed and worried. The director himself was shocked by the fact that the look of this young actor changed in an instant and made him so excited. He turned to Eun-jin, asking if he knew what human eyes looked like in the dark. The director understood that this was obvious, although many did not notice it. Human pupils were normally constricted, but in the dark they would widen to take in more light. This was instinctive. Director Yoo Jong-suk often observed this phenomenon during night shoots. Yoo Jong-suk noticed that Kim Hyun-soo's pupils were dilated even in the illuminated area. It wasn't just this that seemed strange to him, but also the fact that the young man didn't move a single muscle while Soo Aina read her lines. The director couldn't notice any facial expressions on the young men's faces. The guy didn't flinch even once, but at the same time his gaze was riveted on Soo Aina's eyes. The director felt that this look was exactly like that of a real psychopathic criminal, which was a very important point in this role. Yoo Jong-suk instantly made up his mind, but he delayed for a long time just to be sure of his decision and not to seem strange in the eyes of the film crew. The director said they would send the footage straight to her. The phone rang sharply, distracting me from the important task. The girl was quickly typing something on the computer and was slightly indignant at the annoying ringing. She answered the phone, greeted the director, and noted that she was busy and would like to quickly find out what was going on. The director asked the girl to watch the video he sent her. She immediately began reviewing the footage. Half a minute later, the girl was completely shocked by what she saw and asked what it was. Kim Hyun-soo walked in the twilight with barely audible steps. His breathing was even despite one exciting moment. He stared straight ahead, scanning the alley. He sensed how uninteresting the situation was turning out. The flickering landscapes did not give him any of the thrills he craved. He looked for these sensations everywhere, moving to a variety of places. Only the very end of this monotonous path filled his world with at least some colors. He felt that to experience the thrill, it was necessary to have two things. He demanded something sharp and something fragile, the sound of which could be heard thanks to these two things was always very pleasant for him to hear. It was another terrible dream. Kim Hyun-soo seemed to be transforming into another person. He became a killer while he slept. It was hard to bear. Kim Hyun-soo shuddered from this nightmare, breaking out in a cold sweat. Waking up and realizing that everything he had seen was just a dream, he immediately heard the voice of a girl next to him who asked if he had had a nightmare. The girl looked displeased and stern. She stood next to the sofa where Kim Hyun-soo slept, looking at him with a piercing gaze, her arms crossed over her chest. The girl immediately stated that she was going to wake up Kim Hyun-soo anyway, and it was good that he woke up on his own. Then, without giving Kim Hyun-soo a chance to speak, the girl said that she thought he'd been living a great life after the filming was cancelled. Kim Hyun-soo tensed up. He looked at the girl and felt a wave of emotions wash over him again. The girl introduced herself as Gu Eun-ju and waited for Kim Hyun-soo to understand at least something. Kim Hyun-soo thought the girl's name sounded familiar. He'd heard it before but couldn't place it. While Kim Hyun-soo was pondering this, the girl noted her impatience and immediately asked what he was thinking while he was playing like that. Her gaze was angry. Gu Eun-ju emphasized that it was very important for her to know the thoughts and emotions behind Kim Hyun-soo's recent performance. Kim Hyun-soo was completely confused, not understanding who the woman was standing in front of him was and what she wanted from him. But suddenly he began to realize where he had heard that name and why it was so familiar to him. The girl was the screenwriter for the film he wanted to star in. He became even more agitated because he didn't immediately realize who he was talking to. Gu Eun-ju confirmed that she was indeed the scriptwriter, but her indignation grew. She wasn't happy that Kim Hyun-soo was taking so long to recover. Gu Eun-ju was a rising star in Korean writing. She wrote intense, suspenseful stories full of mystery and deep, relatable characters. Gu Eun-ju achieved success with her debut thriller last year, and was a top screenwriter in the mystery genre even though she was still a rookie. Kim Hyun-soo immediately jumped off the sofa and respectfully greeted the scriptwriter and introduced himself. This girl was the pillar of the entire drama in which he starred as a supporting character, and meeting her was supposed to be a little different from what Kim Hyun-soo himself imagined. Gu Eun-ju took Kim Hyun-soo to the dressing room to get to know each other and discuss some details. She handed him a cup of coffee and asked him to get ready as quickly as possible. Gu Eun-ju couldn't wait for the answers to the questions posed to the new actor and reminded him that he should hurry up and answer them. Kim Hyun-soo took a sip of coffee and wondered what he had been thinking about while acting out that scene with the detective. He admitted to himself that something was definitely wrong even during the filming of that scene. He was aware that something was different than usual, and it felt as if he was being overcome by emotions that were not his own. Kim Hyun-soo doubted that these were emotions at all, since it was more like some kind of sensation coming against his will. He felt it as if the thoughts and feelings of the character in his last dream had begun to take hold. Kim Hyun-soo tensed as he realized this. He thought that if he told the screenwriter something like that, he would certainly end up in a mental hospital. He pursed his lips and decided that if it came down to it, he should go to the bank. He replied that he was presenting himself as a character, a suspect who had been wrongly accused. Judging by her reaction, Gu Eun-ju expected something different. Surprise appeared on her face, and she asked again what the actor actually had. Kim Hyun-soo put his glass on the table and asked who of all the possible crimes could have been dragged into the station for questioning on suspicion of murder. He answered his own question, explaining that Inko, his character, could either be a pining lover who keeps up with his significant other, a completely innocent person, or a real villain with a criminal history of petty offenses. Thus, Kim Hyun-soo led his answer to the fact that during the game he thought that the character could well have committed other terrible deeds that were not yet revealed. Gu Eun-ju was completely shocked by the rookie actor's response, which was the reason why she wasn't called to the main office so urgently. But in an instant, a smile began to spread across his face. The room erupted in loud laughter. She called Kim Hyun-soo funny and noted that his insights sounded fresh and engaging, but there was one catch. This wave of laughter, as suddenly as it appeared, was replaced by an angry expression on his face. She looked at Kim Hyun-soo and asked if he was the scriptwriter who could reason like that. Kim Hyun-soo became worried, thinking that he had said something completely wrong. The screenwriter mumbled that apparently their new little actor was now personally creating the character without caring about the intentions of the real screenwriter. Understanding that he had to get out of this situation in the best possible way, Kim Hyun-soo collected his thoughts and, assuming as confident an appearance as possible, confirmed that this is exactly what he did. Gu Eun-ju expected that the young man would start to deny it or become completely confused, and his confident answer surprised her greatly. And Kim Hyun-soo understood that it was better to admit everything at that moment because ridiculous excuses would not help his case in any way. The girl chuckled and ruffled her hair, saying that she had no more words. She looked away somewhere and said that overall it was wonderful. Let's pause. The girl noted that they naturally wouldn't use the take that they filmed recently, but Kim Hyun-soo didn't quite understand what she was getting at. He was upset that even such a short take was rejected. I realized that of course this was a natural outcome for an actor who was challenging the screenwriter, and he answered the girl that he understood everything, looking down at the floor. The screenwriter didn't say anything else to him and called the director, while Kim Hyun-soo stood, rooted to the spot, not knowing what to do with himself from such disappointments. The director immediately entered the dressing room with a slight grin on his face. He walked further, waiting for Gu Eun-ju's statement. The girl asked him to cut scene number 34 and replace the actor, and also asked if they could do an audition immediately since she was too busy to go back for approval. Kim Hyun-soo listened attentively to this dialogue and became even more confused about what it could mean. He partially understood that the audition was probably his, but doubted it would turn out that way. The director smiled and noted that it was unheard of for auditions to be held in the middle of filming, but he agreed, emphasizing that since the screenwriter wanted it, the director had to give in, having no other choice. Gu Eun-ju snorted, noting that it was obvious that the director himself wanted this, and most likely everything was already ready, and the director awkwardly agreed with the girl, noting that, as expected from a screenwriter who assisted for almost 10 years, her intuition shamed even a veteran of the business. At this point, Kim Hyun-soo couldn't stand it and asked what they both meant by auditions, worried that he was fired. Gu Eun-ju looked at him in surprise and asked if the scriptwriter would go to such lengths to fire a minor character. The girl smirked and explained that specifically Kim Hyun-soo was indeed fired from his role as suspect number 2. The girl no longer looked so angry and asked Kim Hyun-soo to listen to her carefully. Well, she explained with a not very pleased look that she doesn't particularly like guys like him, those who rely only on their talent, denying teamwork for the sake of individual glory. Well, she also explained that this does not mean that she literally hates such people. Kim Hyun-soo was still confused and timidly asked what her words meant. The screenwriter noted that no matter how terrifying the mystery or crime, the show's diligent detective worked to the end to figure them out. After this, the girl asked if Kim Hyun-soo knew who the character Yeonmi that she created was based on. Kim Hyun-soo asked who he was based on, and the screenwriter replied that it was based on her, which in turn greatly surprised Kim Hyun-soo himself. The screenwriter noted that it was not about her sense of justice but something else. After a short pause, the girl explained that it was a matter of competition since she never shied away from a fight. Ignoring the rookie actor's even greater confusion, Gu Eun-ju suggested that they see what happens since they were already starting to compete. Gu Eun-ju was very responsible about her work, and she wanted to make sure that this actor was worth casting. From the short scene, it was still unclear whether there was actually anything special about this guy. Gu Eun-ju took out some papers that were stapled together from behind her back and handed them to Kim Hyun-soo. She explained that it was a freshly printed draft that she had not yet shown to the director. The girl also explained that Kim Hyun-soo's goal was to convince everyone with her acting using this draft. She smiled and asked him to show her that very game. Kim Hyun-soo was very worried. I understand that they want to approve him for the role, but he will have to put in maximum effort and prove to everyone that he is truly special. After handing over the draft to Kim Hyun-soo, Gu Eun-ju immediately left. Kim Hyun-soo was left alone. He sat down on the sofa and decided to read the draft. Emotions overwhelmed him. He exhaled heavily, trying to pull himself together. He collected his thoughts and told himself that it was worth completing the task 100%. He flipped to the title page and ran his eyes down the page. But after glancing at the script page, Kim Hyun-soo was shocked. He couldn't believe his own eyes and didn't know how to react to what he saw. After a very long time of work, the girl slightly stretched her arms upwards to warm up. She asked a colleague where the scriptwriter had gone, to which the colleague replied that she knew that the author had suddenly taken off somewhere grabbing the manuscript. The girl asked again what script they were talking about, and her colleague explained that she was talking about the scene of Lee Jae-won's appearance, which she had finished writing today, which surprised the girl. She took a mug of coffee and slowly took a sip, thinking about something. But she immediately realized that her colleague's answer raised some questions for her. She noted with slight confusion and surprise that she doubted that the author had finished writing this scene. The girls began arguing among themselves whether this scene had been finished, despite the fact that one of them had previously claimed so. But the girl resisted, explaining that she was saying that the author had to finish the scene today, and not that she had already written it. After a short argument, they realized that the author had taken only the first page, which was printed to test the printer instead of the finished scene, and this was a big problem. They tried to call the author, but she didn't answer, which only increased the general panic so much, so that one even considered going to the filming in person and trying to sort everything out in person. This red-haired girl's name was Yondenbo, and she believed that if she didn't go herself, no one else would. Before filming began, Kim Hyun-soo was told that auditions would start soon, and that he should come out as soon as he was ready. He immediately came out and stood in front of the cameras, although he felt a little confused and embarrassed. He wondered if he should have immediately asked the team about the draft they had given him. He couldn't find any logical explanation for why the screenwriter had given him a blank sheet of paper. This draft, except for a couple of scene directions, was completely empty. Kim Hyun-soo could only explain this by saying that the screenwriter wanted to see improvisation. Kim Hyun-soo glanced toward where the director-screenwriter and the girl playing the detective were sitting. They were waiting for his performance. Each of them stared at Kim Hyun-soo without even a hint of a smile on their faces. Screenwriter Gu Eun-ju was even more hostile, and even with her gaze she seemed to challenge Kim Hyun-soo. Even the director, who was usually easygoing and smiling, sat emotionlessly and looked at Kim Hyun-soo, his lips only slightly pursed in impatience. Kim Hyun-soo felt a little uneasy because everyone was looking only at him. He figured they all wanted to see some acting and were expecting something special. Kim Hyun-soo decided for himself that in any case the fact that he had to stand out did not change. He wondered if he was even ready for the game, but immediately interrupted this thought by saying that there was nothing to prepare for because he was always ready for such moments, and let the team know that he could start the game. The videographer, without removing his hands from the video camera, looked at the director with bewilderment. After this, the command to get ready was given and a warning was given that filming would begin. Kim Hyun-soo was completely focused and calm, ready to go all out. He didn't know if it was a coincidence that his dad's lines of instructions for the scene were similar to what he had recently seen in a dream. The man was wandering somewhere in complete darkness, but at the same time he was so confident, as if he knew the area perfectly. A dream he had had the day before his current audition for the role flashed before Kim Hyun-soo's eyes. Everything was exactly as in the script, and he tried to remember the state he felt in the dream and took a leisurely step forward. Kim Hyun-soo evened out his breathing and lifted his chin to appear more confident. He merged these two images. He became the very man he had been in his dream and whom he now had to show to the film crew. The Pine Man couldn't resist the unfamiliar feeling that urged him on. An unfamiliar feeling flared in the depths of his heart. Perhaps it was interest or excitement, or perhaps just approaching. Kim Hyun-soo doubted that this could be considered an emotion at all, and soon became convinced that it was an instinct. Almost immediately, Kim Hyun-soo became convinced that this was a genuine feeling of instinct. All people, one way or another, live in their own world and have chosen their own path to follow. This always varies from person to person, and Kim Hyun-soo believed this was the definition of instinct. As he got into character, Kim Hyun-soo decided that the state he needed to experience was a basic survival instinct. God created him different from birth, and it was his struggle to prove his existence to God. Kim Hyun-soo took another step forward to find himself in the circle of light and hoped with all his heart that the Almighty saw and heard him. It was extremely important for Kim Hyun-soo to prove to everyone, including himself, that he was unique. The hero mentally communicated with God and wondered if he was watching him. In his world now, only two things mattered. These things were something sharp and something fragile, and the hero reached out his hand into the darkness. He held in his hand a sharp knife that was both sharp and fragile. Although in reality Kim Hyun-soo had an ordinary ballpoint pen in his hand, as soon as the camera started recording, he became a completely different person in a completely different world and held the most important thing in his hand. He walked up to the scriptwriter and, holding a pen right in front of her face, indicated that she had apparently turned it. The girl stared in surprise at the sharp writing end of an ordinary pen. Gu Eun-ju felt a drop of cold sweat trickle down her cheek and wondered if the pen had always been so sharp and dangerous. The girl wondered when she had managed to drop it and remembered that it could have happened while she was watching the acting. Gu Eun-ju felt a slight sense of unease, which she found both strange and admirable at the same time. An inexplicable horror ran through the screenwriter's entire body, and the girl paid special attention to this feeling. After thinking for a bit, Gu Eun-ju noted to herself that it wasn't even creepy, but rather something more disgusting. The screenwriter wondered if Kim Hyun-soo was really acting, since he had only walked up to her table, but his approach was downright mesmerizing. Gu Yunju immediately emphasized in her mind that such a game was not even close to an ordinary one. The girl's expression changed and she turned to Kim Hyun-soo and asked if she could ask him a question. She decided not to give in to the incomprehensible influence and nervously noticing that Kim Hyun-soo had approached her instead of reading his lines asked what the reason was for this. Kim Hyun-soo came to his senses and once again confused noted that there was not a single line in the manuscript he had received. Gu Eunju looked at him in surprise and asked what he meant, not understanding how this could be possible. Just then Yeonmi entered the room. She looked frightened and holding a stack of papers immediately called out to the author. Gu Eunju looked at the girl in surprise and asked what she was doing in the office. Yeonmi came a little closer, clearly worried about the unpleasant situation that had developed. She handed a stack of papers to Gu Eunju and quickly said that the author had taken that text. Gu Eunju didn't understand what was going on, already thinking that there was a mistake, but immediately her gaze fell on the blank sheets that Kim Hyun-soo was showing her. Gu Eunju immediately snatched the stack of papers from the actor's hands and began to look through them. Having combed through each sheet, the screenwriter was convinced that there really was not a single dialogue there. She became convinced that Kim Hyun-soo's performance was based on only a couple of explanatory lines about the scene. She looked at Kim Hyun-soo and with long pauses between words asked who he was. Kim Hyun-soo smiled slightly and simply replied that he was an actor. At this point, the auditions ended without even having begun. Gu Eunju approached her colleagues and asked what they thought about what they saw. The director replied with a smile that, in his opinion, the material was rather raw but incredibly interesting. Ju Aina noted that this could be risky, although she understood that she would not have to make such a decision. Gu Eunju turned away, and director Yoo Jong-suk crossed his arms and leaned back in his chair staring straight ahead. Gu Eunju thought that Kim Hyun-soo's acting was not like an imitation. She saw that the guy had fully immersed himself in his character's skin and had the demeanor and boundaries to emulate. It was a level of high-quality acting typically reserved for professionals. The author understood that this was certainly a top-notch performance, but Kim Hyun-soo seemed to have put something more into it, in her opinion. The girl nervously tapped her pen on the table, trying to make a decision. She turned to the director and asked if he wouldn't be interested in seeing what would happen if he added character motivation and cleverly constructed dialogue. Ju Aina and Yoo Jong-suk smiled at the same time in response to the author's question, clearly agreeing with her. This smile meant a lot to the author, and she quickly made the following decision. She turned to Kim Hyun-soo and warned that she would tell him everything directly. She said that she wanted to offer him a role in their project, although her facial expression could hardly be called happy. Kim Hyun-soo was shocked by this statement and most of all by the fact that the auditions were apparently over, and even asked about it again. He didn't understand what was happening. He'd heard rejections many times in his life. Trying out for roles was grueling. He thought he'd most likely be given the significant supporting role he'd originally auditioned for. He asked the screenwriter about it directly, but she stunned him by telling him she wanted him for the lead. He couldn't believe his ears. Sweat broke out on his face from excitement. Gu Eunju looked straight into his eyes, showing that it was not the time for jokes, and she was speaking quite seriously. She said that she wanted him to play the character of Lee Jae-won, the main villain of the drama The Antagonist. Kim Hyun-soo didn't even hope that he would ever be offered the leading role, and even more so that it would be his first role in his life. What was even stranger was that the actor for the role had already been cast, and he asked the screenwriter about it. The girl hesitated a bit and briefly explained that there were some circumstances. During a short pause, she narrowed her eyes and asked Kim Hyun-soo to answer whether he agreed to play the main role or not. Kim Hyun-soo was shocked that the scriptwriters and director wanted to replace the already approved actor with him, a newcomer who had dozens of rejections behind him, even for the simplest roles. For him, this was simply an incredible and unthinkable situation, but this is exactly what he dreamed about, and that is why the group confidently responded that they agreed with this proposal. Gu Eunju smiled and noted that she was already ready to persuade the young man if he refused. After Hyun-soo agreed to play the lead role in the film, everyone had to discuss some details. At the end of the conversation, the director noted with a smile that from now on Kim Hyun-soo was part of the team and could come to the set at any time to get acquainted with the environment and atmosphere of filming. Ju Aina was also very happy and emphasized that she was really counting on the new actor because she was simply delighted at the thought that she would no longer have to deal with the scumbag Jang Ji-hoon, who was originally supposed to play the main role. The director, hearing what the girl was saying, chuckled, noting that she shouldn't have thrown around such cruel words. Ju Ina approached Kim Hyun-soo and handed him a business card asking him to take care of her from now on. The card contained a number to contact her at, and she hoped they would communicate more often from now on. Kim Hyun-soo was surprised that this girl even gave him her number and thought that he was dreaming the whole thing. When everyone had calmed down and gone about their business, Kim Hyun-soo's friend Hyo Yeon-jin came up to him and literally shouted in his ear asking what he had done here to receive so much attention. Hyo Yeon-jin put an arm around his shoulder, noting that everyone around him was going crazy over the fact that he'd brought a real killer onto the set. Afterward, he simply sincerely congratulated his colleague on getting the role. Kim Hyun-soo smiled and noted that it was all thanks to Hyo Yeon-jin, but then replied that it was excessive modesty that infuriated him. Hyo Yeon-jin waved his hand and noted that he had to go about his business and suggested that they chat sometime over a glass of soju. Kim Hyun-soo was given his own locker where he could leave his things, and he immediately went to inspect everything. He opened the locker and remembered that he had left almost all of his things at the hospital in order to get to the filming as quickly as possible, and now he should go back for them. While he was looking at his locker, a screenwriter approached him with a stack of papers. She explained that she had forgotten something and handed him the correct manuscript, then promised to contact him after the meeting with the producer and asked that the guy try to grasp the essence until then. The girl noted that this concerned not only the description but also the details of each episode, and also said that Lee Jae-won, whose character Kim Hyun-soo will play, was supposed to appear in the script very soon. I thought for a second with the girl and asked if Kim Hyun-soo had accidentally heard the name Jang Ki-chun. Kim Hyun-soo repeated the name to herself several times and realized that she knew it for sure. It was painfully familiar to him, although it seemed as if he was hearing it for the first time. After a little thought, Kim Hyun-soo guessed that this name was the one from his dream. But I don't want to reveal such details about myself lest I be considered crazy. Kim Hyun-soo asked the screenwriter who this person was. Gu Eun-ju replied that it was a real person on whom Lee Ji-won's character was based. Kim Hyun-soo was especially surprised after the scriptwriter revealed that this man was a legend who had passed away. So it's more likely that the young man knew little or nothing about him. She suggested that he Google it in his spare time as it could greatly help his acting. As she left the theater, the screenwriter noted that it might sound strange, but the impression Kim Hyun-soo's performance made was exactly how she imagined the character. Turning around, she emphasized that she seemed to have met Jae-won, whom she imagined, and whether she should concentrate on writing a good script. This shocked Kim Hyun-soo even more. He had many questions about the current situation. After this brief dialogue, the screenwriter left Kim Hyun-soo to pursue her own affairs. After looking around the office, Kim Hyun-soo went to the hospital and decided to take the subway instead of a taxi. He sat on one of the chairs and, holding the script tightly in his hands, thought about the fact that apparently the dreams he had seen so far were from the perspective of the prototype of the drama character. Kim Hyun-soo recalled the words of his colleague Hyo Yeon-jin, who said that the entire team was delighted with the new actor who looked exactly like a killer. Kim Hyun-soo understood that everything he saw in the dream and felt were the emotions of Jang Ki-chun, and it was you and his thoughts that he exclaimed in the carriage how incredible it was. Now he had to take a good look at this strange phenomenon. Kim Hyun-soo understood that no matter how strange it was, he had to pay close attention to his dreams, and this would help him play his role. He read the plot while riding the subway, in which a detective discovers a mysterious diary, but not just any diary, but a killer's diary detailing scenes of murders, and the people mentioned in the diary beginning to die one after another. Kim Hyun-soo read that the only clues were dry descriptions of the environment or mentions of specific objects in the diary, and in pursuit of the nightmares described on the pages, the detective gradually plunged into the darkness described by the mad killer. This was followed by Lee Ji-won's first appearance. According to the script, the man's face strolling through the dreary forest was impossible to see, nor was it possible to discern what it reflected. His very existence was nothing more than a figment of the detective's imagination. This was the phantom killer, a man the detective had never encountered, and his identity was shrouded in mystery. Only scenes of brutal murders perfectly faithful to the diary pages confirmed his existence. This was exactly how it had been in Kim Hyun-soo's dream. Kim Hyun-soo's curiosity only grew, and he decided to make a search and find out what kind of person Jang Ki-chun really was. When the search engine returned the results, Kim Hyun-soo was very surprised. One of the websites had a headline that spoke of the phantom killer Jang Ki-chun. This further intrigued Kim Hyun-soo. Kim Hyun-soo read a special nightmarish edition of the 1992 investigation into the phantom killer Jang Ki-chun whose primary victims were women. According to preliminary reports, he murdered 17 women, including prostitutes. The most interesting thing is that even the name established during the investigation turned out to be merely an alias used by the killer to confuse the investigation. The existence of an alias greatly surprised Kim Hyun-soo. This man became the first murderer in Korean history, burning down his house and committing suicide to remain anonymous and leave an indelible stain on the police's reputation. It was entirely possible that this unknown psycho was still lurking somewhere in the shadows. After reading the article about this man, Kim Hyun-soo was left with mixed emotions. He was simultaneously frightened and shocked and even more curious. It was surprising that Jang Ki-chun committed suicide even though the police hadn't really had time to track him down. Kim Hyun-soo couldn't understand how a killer who had been active 30 years ago and had never been identified could appear in his dreams, considering he had never heard of such a person before. Very creepy thoughts crept into Kim Hyun-soo's head. He feared that, in other words, he was simply dreaming the dreams of a dead person. Kim Hyun-soo was so carried away by these thoughts about his dream and the phantom killer that even the rare sidelong glances of other passengers did not bother him much. He had no idea what this phenomenon was, but he was sure that he knew one thing for sure. This dream that he had had a strong impact on his acting, and it was obvious. Overall, it was natural because synchronizing with other people's emotions was in a sense a solid foundation for acting growth, but still it seemed like some kind of miracle. He recalled that while performing scene 34, he was consumed by Jang Ki-hoon's emotions. The results were beyond praise, but from our acting perspective it was unprofessional. Kim Hyun-soo thought that if Ki-chung's emotion were to develop during another shoot, it would be very difficult to act in that case. From this, Kim Hyun-soo will conclude that he should have learned to control this phenomenon. Otherwise, the memories and emotions of the characters in the dream could completely absorb him, and he would not be interested in this at all. After those events, Kim Hyun-soo rested in the hospital for 1 day and returned home. His body showed no signs of abnormality, but there was another problem. Even on his days off, he continued to see the value in Jang Ki-chun's participation. Every time he opened his eyes, he struggled to suppress the emotions that overwhelmed him at that moment. He felt an inexplicable hostility toward the world, anger, and an unbearable hunger. But worst of all, he felt a murderous intent. Fortunately, as he thought these emotions were just a residual effect of the dream, so he could easily push them into the subconscious and maintain clarity of thought. But the point was that he had to pull them out of there as needed for the acting. He remembered very well how his performance was called crude, and although he was ultimately accepted for the lead role, he understood that he had a lot of work to do on himself, and he should not allow such words to be directed at him again. Kim Hyun-soo understood that he had to somehow find a balance between Ki-chung and himself, and this was the only adequate way to do it. He should have been pumping up his own acting to the max, which could have possibly given him the opportunity to control everything else. In acting, he had to clearly distinguish between reality and dreams. Kim Hyun-soo decided that he needed to channel these dreams into his acting so that he could gain that control. He also understood that he would not be able to cope in a day or two, and for now he had to somehow separate himself from the personality of Chon Ki-chun. 2 weeks of this fuss passed, and Kim Hyun-soo finally received the long-awaited call. He was told that discussing plans with the production team had taken longer than expected. But then the voice of the girl who called him changed abruptly, which caused a little tension in Kim Hyun-soo. She recalled that Kim Hyun-soo himself had previously said that he was not registered with any agency. The office was noisy. The man was indignant that those above were so concerned about the actor's reputation that they wouldn't even provide him with work for money. The man became so nervous that he began to choke and loosened his tie a little, but he still didn't stop swearing. Having calmed down a bit, he decided to get acquainted with the actor that the scriptwriter had pushed through. A drama producer named Ju Chan-ok looked into Kim Hyun-soo's case and immediately noted that he had never heard of that name. One of the drama's filming days had arrived. It was a bright and sunny day. Producer Ju Chang-suk was also present at this filming, but he kept a little distance and had a somewhat dissatisfied look. His lips were pursed and his arms were crossed over his chest. The producer watched each member of the crew closely. Well, this time he visited the filming location for only one reason, although usually he was not present at the filming so often. The reason was the new actor who was cast in the leading role of the drama. Kim Hyun-soo was prepared for filming and lightly applied makeup to reduce shine on her skin, and even out her overall complexion. Soon Kim Hyun-soo, Gu Eun-ju, and producer Ju Chong-suk gathered at a local cafe to chat. Gu Eun-ju, upon hearing the number that the producer named, became indignant and did not even try to control her behavior. The producer confirmed that he was charging exactly 50 per episode, emphasizing that getting a contract for a higher amount was almost impossible. Throughout the dialogue, the producer kept an eye on Kim Hyun-soo. He seemed good enough, but not so good that his gaze was caught. The producer felt that by industry standards, Kim Hyun-soo was average, although for the role of Ji-woo, appearance was not as important as acting. Kim Hyun-soo was quite satisfied with the amount the producer named, but Gu Eun-ju looked very upset. She looked down, noting that the producer apparently hadn't seen anything. To the producer's surprised look, she explained in response that she was referring to Kim's auditions, which should have been viewed in their entirety, before offering the ridiculous amount that Ju Chong-suk had named. Seeing the scriptwriter's angry look, Ju Chong-suk felt awkward and tried to explain that he was simply busy with work. Gu Eun-ju didn't want to leave things as they were and suggested that the producer watch the new actor and his performance right on the set, noting that it would be easier for the producers to understand when he saw the performance with his own eyes. Gu Eun-ju could not calm down and stated that the producer's conclusions were too naive. After this conversation, filming was scheduled to begin. Ju Chong-suk was eager to see the rookie's performance. One of the crew members passed by and remarked that producer Ju was very lucky and apparently had a knack for a captivating show. This greatly surprised the producer. He couldn't understand why the entire crew was in such a good mood and talking about something that was bound to astound everyone. Soon everyone was bustling about. Filming was about to begin. At that very moment, Gu Eun-ju approached Kim Hyun-soo. She reminded him that she had told him earlier on the phone and asked him to consider the current filming as a continuation of the audition. Kim Hyun-soo smiled back and assured her he understood. This time the scene was also very simple. A man was wandering somewhere in complete darkness, and the setting was a pitch-black forest. The detective was imagining the first page of the diary she had recently acquired, and Kim Hyun-soo wasn't worried about it. Gu Eun-ju clarified whether Kim Hyun-soo received a revised version of the script, noting that she excluded as many detailed descriptions for filming as possible because she felt they were not suitable for actors like him. At this, Kim Hyun-soo paused for a moment and only asked if he should have used the same tool as last time. Seeing that the screenwriter didn't understand what he was talking about, he explained that John used a specific object to kill. Gu Eun-ju chuckled and clarified that this object was usually called a weapon. The girl also approached a small suitcase, and opening it showed a large set of tools. She took out a screwdriver and explained that the tool that Ji-won mainly used was precisely this, and if Kim Hyun-soo had read the description, he should have known that this was the very tool that John's father used to punish him in his childhood. Producer Ju Chong-suk watched this exchange closely, curious to see how it would end. After thinking for a moment, Kim Hyun-soo asked if he could use other tools from the box while playing. The producer, hearing this, grimaced with indignation, considering the newcomer to be a terrible, impudent fellow. Kim Hyun-soo walked over to the toolbox and noted that a screwdriver was not the most suitable tool for murder. He picked up a hammer, saying that it wasn't so easy to kill a person with a stab wound from a screwdriver or other sharp object. But considering that this wasn't the character's first murder, he should have understood the best way to kill. Kim Hyun-soo was sure that he would therefore rather choose a blunt object to kill himself, allowing him to do so with minimal effort. Gu Eun-ju was shocked by Kim Hyun-soo's reasoning and didn't immediately find what to answer him. Kim Hyun-soo smiled and explained that he was saying this based on rational considerations as a Ji-won. Gu Eun-ju thought for a moment and replied that she could admit that his arguments were quite convincing, and agreed that some details could indeed be changed, and allowed Kim Hyun-soo to implement his ideas within certain limits as long as they did not contradict the original. But Gu Eun-ju pointed out that the screwdriver had to remain the signature weapon of Ji-won's murder. This could not be discussed further, so as not to disrupt the drama structure. This was enough for Kim Hyun-soo, for which he thanked the writer. The producer, upon hearing this, could not believe his ears that the aspiring actors and the screenwriter would discuss such details. Soon the director shouted that everyone should get ready, check the decor and lighting, and they would begin filming. Kim Hyun-soo, in his role as the main character Ji-won, stood near a tall tree against the backdrop of the sunset, looking straight ahead. The scene was called Insect Collection. Ji-won always felt sorry for insects since they had done nothing wrong. On a typical day walking in the forest, he discovered one. Ji-won walked forward slowly, and with a special confidence as if he knew exactly his goal. He held the instrument tightly in his hand and tried to remember how to work with it. Each of his steps seemed to become heavier but at the same time more confident. Soon Jaiwan sped up significantly and soon he was running forward at full speed. He had to do the job properly and at that moment nothing could stop him. The film crew was focused on doing their job properly and capturing every detail in the actor's image. But what Kim Hyun-soo showed amazed everyone present. Producer Ju Chong-suk was taken aback by what he saw on set. He stared at Kim Hyun-soo and seemed to understand what Gu Eun-ju had been telling him. The producer rubbed his eyes, forcing himself to make sure he wasn't imagining things. Kim Hyun-soo ran forward, and it looked so natural, as if it was a hidden camera shot of a real criminal. He stomped hard on the insect, as he called it. The swing of the hammer resounded like a whistle in the complete silence. There was a blow after which the hammer flew to the side and landed roughly on the ground. Jaiwan froze and listened. He didn't know what he was trying to hear. The producer stood rooted to the spot. He was deeply impressed by what he saw with his own eyes. He had never seen such acting before. Jaiwan squatted down and tried to figure out who was really to blame for everything. He reasoned that neither the man who had stepped in nor the insects had done anything wrong. It was simply a pattern. He stared ahead, his expression puzzled. The next moment Jaiwan swung his arm sharply to strike. He held a screwdriver in his hand. At that moment, the cameras were filming Kim Hyun-soo from behind. He looked completely innocent despite who he really was. Jaiwan punched the air and remained in that position for a moment, after which Jaiwan rose to his full height. It was clear that he had done what he had wished. In his understanding, was it the fault of the one who created such conditions in which the time and place of the intersection of the insect and the onset coincided perfectly? In his diary, Jaiwan insisted that he genuinely felt sorry for the insects. With this remark, Kim Hyun-soo walked off into the sunset, his back to the camera. The director shouted that the scene had been filmed. The entire crew was confused. Many people were murmuring among themselves, remarking on how terrifying the scene was. The producer certainly agreed, but he still couldn't utter a word. Ju Chong-suk was outraged that what Kim Hyun-soo showed was called acting, because acting was obviously an imitation and copycat. In acting, one had to analyze a character and build an idea of him, and then reproduce it through dialogue, gestures, and facial expressions, so the actor's performance usually contained a certain unnaturalness and predictability. But in Kisa Hyun-soo's performance, there was nothing like that at all according to the producer, because the guy simply instantly transformed into the real Lee Jaiwan. The producer let out a heavy sigh, noting to himself that the scriptwriter had found a real monster, and now he understood why the girl had been so fussing over him. It was obvious that Kim Hyun-soo's career was going to take off with this project. The producer heard behind his back that director Yoo Young-suk told Gu Eun-ju that he agreed with the main character acting as he saw fit, since such a transformation was something that was rarely seen. Gu Eun-ju walked closer to the producer and asked with a smirk on her face if she was right. The producer smiled back at her and asked where the author had managed to dig up such an actor. Gu Eun-ju looked away slightly and admitted that if she thought about it, she hadn't found him anywhere. She looked at Kim Hyun-soo and, seeing the confusion on the producer's face, explained that this guy had burst into their world himself and was apparently just a chimera. After filming the scene where Lee Jaiwan makes her first appearance, the entire crew went to a restaurant to celebrate a little and chat in a relaxed atmosphere. When the dishes were brought to their table, the director addressed everyone and noted that everyone had done a wonderful job. The director poured soju into a glass and turned to Kim Hyun-soo, offering him a drink, laughing loudly. After handing a glass to Kim Hyun-soo, director Yoo Jong-suk asked him if he liked his first serious filming, to which he replied that it was basically the first filming in his life, which greatly surprised the director. Kim Hyun-soo honestly admitted that everything was new to him, but he enjoyed working together with the team to create an exciting scene in the drama and then celebrating it together. Tears welled up in Kim Hyun-soo's eyes. Trying to contain his emotions, Kim Hyun-soo thanked everyone for giving him this opportunity. The director laughed and called him a touchy flower, although in fact the young man gave me goosebumps with his acting. Seeing the confusion in the newcomer's eyes, the director explained that he had flowers whose buds collapse at the slightest touch. The director tried to make a joke, but the entire crew instantly felt deeply ashamed of his words. The director realized he had said something wrong and wrote to correct the situation a little. He explained to Kim Hyun-soo that he had done a good job on the set and suggested that everyone work hard together from now on. The team sat for some time and discussed work while simultaneously starting to eat dinner. After some time, the director and screenwriter left, and producer Ju Chong-suk had the opportunity to personally approach Kim Hyun-soo. The producer guiltily said that what he had said earlier without realizing it was unnecessary, but Kim Hyun-soo poured him some more soji and assured him that he completely understood. The producer felt a little better. He was glad the young man understood everything and explained that that was just the way the industry was, and turned the conversation to the contract they had previously discussed. It was perfectly clear the producer didn't know what to do with himself. He was angry and deeply embarrassed. He stood up and nervously asked Kim Hyun-soo to be completely honest and open with each other, and then asked how much Kim Hyun-soo wanted as his fee. Kim Hyun-soo didn't particularly expect this question, but the previously offered amount suited him considering that this was his first role. The next day, headlines announced that the role of the main villain in the drama When Darkness Consumes Lee Jae-won had gone to another actor, Kim Hyun-soo, whose name had become known to the general public for the first time. Kim Hyun-soo returned home as it was already completely dark. He sank happily into his chair and exhaled heavily. The past day had been very eventful. Kim Hyun-soo had worked hard and was incredibly tired. Kim Hyun-soo raised his hand up and looked through his fingers at the ceiling and froze in that position for a moment. He noted that he had learned to control himself better, but the results were still not stable. On set, he explained to the screenwriter that his character was supposed to understand how best to kill, but now she realized that those words definitely did not come from him. Jang Ki-hoon's essence was not supposed to go beyond acting. While Kim Hyun-soo also understood that these were not all the negative aspects that he had to face. Although he was a little anxious, he successfully used Jang Ki-hoon's emotions to play Lee Ji-won well. While filming, he felt as if he was in his own dream. This phenomenon definitely had a downside, Hyun-soo thought. This style of play from the front only works in the early stages in solo centers. As for scenes that required interaction and cooperation with other actors, this power could have turned into poison for Kim Hyun-soo. Kim Hyun-soo understood that in this way he had to completely tame this monster that lived inside his head. Soon another scene was successfully filmed. The entire crew rejoiced at yet another small success. After filming ended, the director happily noted that actor Kim seemed to have more or less figured out the solo scenes. Kim Hyun-soo asked if this meant that he would now have to act together with others, and the director noted that it was most likely the guy would be filming with other actors for the first time, and most likely he did not know the main cast except for the main character. Therefore, the director suggested holding a reading of the text with everyone and asked how Kim Hyun-soo himself felt about it. Kim Hyun-soo was a little worried when he heard this, but overall he couldn't refuse because it was quite stupid on his part. Before full filming began, the actors would occasionally gather together to read their lines and practice their coordination. Of course, the preliminary reading for When Darkness Falls had already taken place a month earlier, and another meeting for a mid-read was a rare occurrence. Kim Hyun-soo was confused that the director wanted to gather people only because of him. The director smiled and asked not to worry about it, as it would have been problematic to gather everyone due to scheduling conflicts, but they would be able to find at least some of Jang Do-suk and Joo In-woo who would be interacting with Kim Hyun-soo. Kim Hyun-soo became even more tense when he heard that he would be working with Chon Damov. Anyone who watched dramas was familiar with this name. Jang Do-suk was a respectable supporting actor in the drama world. Kim Hyun-soo himself grew up watching films starring this man. Kim Hyun-soo looked at the director and said that if his colleagues were willing, he would be happy to participate in the reading. The director smiled again and replied that he would contact everyone soon and arrange a meeting. To my surprise, the director immediately took his phone out of his pocket and started dialing someone's number. A few minutes later, the director turned to Kim Hyun-soo and said that actor Do-suk could meet the next morning and actress Ju was also free at that time. Kim Hyun-soo didn't think it would be so easy to arrange a meeting with these actors, considering he needed the reading more for himself. The next day, Kim Hyun-soo arrived at the cafe early in the morning and met with the director. They drank coffee in silence and waited for the other actors. Kim Hyun-soo looked very worried and was silent for a long time, staring somewhere through the floor. Very unexpectedly for Kim Hyun-soo, someone came up to him from behind and put an arm around his shoulder. A man with a predatory smile appeared from the side and noted that he had heard rumors that an interesting guy had joined the team. Kim Hyun-soo immediately jumped up from the couch and, bowing his head in respect, introduced himself to his colleague. Jang Do-suk introduced himself in return, noting that the young man was very simple-looking, but rumors of his acting skills were truly exciting. Kim Hyun-soo was surprised that Jang Do-suk himself would praise his performance in such a context. Jang Do-suk, smiling, explained that the director, who wasn't exactly kind to everyone, had told him all about it. Yoo Jong-suk himself joined them, laughing and expressing indignation at what Do-suk was talking about, suggesting that he was still sulking over the fact that some takes had to be res-hot. Chon Do-suk, apparently tired of these comments, explained that it simply got him off track that day, but in fact he was not sulking. After waiting a bit, Chon Do-suk asked where the main character was. The director said that she had been urgently called to the set and would probably not be able to come. Chon Do-suk suggested they start reading together. He was eager to see how cool their newcomer was. Jang Do-suk noted that he was a little annoyed that Kim Hyun-soo kept bowing instead of starting, but the director suggested that they start by drinking coffee and chatting a little. Jang Do-suk looked at Kim Hyun-soo and was indignant that since when did actors start their acquaintance like this, and asked the director to first take a look at the newcomer before making such a suggestion. Meanwhile, Kim Hyun-soo was already immersed in his script. He looked intensely focused, as if he'd forgotten everything else going on around him. It felt like he had transported himself to a completely different world in his mind. The director was impressed, but Jang Do-suk laughed at this and asked Yoo Jong-suk how he could be running a coffee shop when the new guy was so focused. Kim Hyun-soo responded to this phrase and glanced at the famous actor, indicating his readiness to begin. Jang Do-suk played the character Jang Man-hoo and was the one who directly encountered Lee Ji-won after Detective Jin Young-mi. He was a former member of a criminal organization who ran his own brothel and was the first to notice the Phantom Killer's existence and began pursuing him. Initially, he was in conflict with the main character Jin Young-mi, but later he began to provide her with invaluable assistance, and among the secondary characters, Jang Man-hoo was the most significant. Jang Do-suk opened his script and suggested moving on to a scene called The First Meeting at the Police Station. The scene took place at the entrance to the police station. Jang Man-hoo's cold but powerful voice stopped Lee Ji-won at the threshold of the station itself. Jang Man-hoo called out to Lee Ji-won rather unfriendly, almost aggressively. Jang Do-seok was eager to see the newcomer play and literally wanted to test his skills. Jang Man-hoo chuckled and wondered out loud if Lee Ji-won had come to surrender, even though he shouldn't have. Kim Hyun-soo froze when he heard the confident voice of the actor who transformed into his character from the very first second. Kim Hyun-soo tapped his foot on the floor to ground himself a bit and come back to himself. Kim Hyun-soo felt himself involuntarily stop. He couldn't understand why the reading had been so tense from the very first seconds. Exhaling, Kim Hyun-soo closed his script and demonstratively placed it on the table. This gesture slightly infuriated Jang Do-suk. He chuckled silently at the newcomer who, in his opinion, was trying to show off. Of course, it was great that the newbie mastered the material so quickly, but he was still a newbie, and everyone, including Chon Do-suk himself, knew that the guy across from him had no experience at all. For Chon Do-suk, this was another challenge, but a pleasant one. His predatory smile once again lit up his face. Jang Do-suk repeated Kim Hyun-soo's words exactly. He closed his script and placed it on the table. He smiled, looking Kim Hyun-soo straight in the eyes, intending to play along with him in every possible way. There were now two scripts on the table. Both actors wanted to show what they were capable of. Jang Man-hoo asked Lee Ji-won if he had killed Mi-suk, Yoo Ji-jua, and the others. His voice didn't waver at all when he mentioned the successful killer's victims. Jang Man-hoo got heated and pointed out that he'd already figured everything out anyway, and Lee Ji-won didn't have to pretend to be a smartass. Lee Ji-won chuckled and asked what he'd say if it wasn't true. Jang Do-suk was taken aback when he saw Kim Hyun-soo open up so quickly to his role and completely transform into the character in the drama. Lee Ji-won's remark only angered Jang Man-hoo. He narrowed his eyes, preparing to attack verbally. Now both actors understood each other's performances. They were both surprised by each other's performances, which made them try even harder. Jang Man-hoo noted that Lee Ji-won had come to the police station to surrender anyway, and there was no point in him hiding anything anymore. Lee Ji-won responded to him that he did not want to prevent someone from reporting him, especially if his crimes were already known. Jang Man-hoo looked at the criminal and noted that he himself did not really understand the law. But catching and killing such a rat as Lee Ji-won himself was a pleasure for him. Lee Ji-won, with a smirk on his face, asked Jang Man-hoo how he was going to kill him. Jang Man-hoo became even more angry because the criminal kept interrupting him and grinning. He also said that he liked to stab people like Yu Jung to death. When Jang Manhu heard that name, he froze in place. With long pauses between words due to shock, he asked again who Lee Jiwon was planning to kill, hoping he'd misheard. Lee Ji-won said indifferently that he wanted to kill Jang Yu-jong from Seoul, residing at number 5 on Songdong-gu Street, Gumho-dong, a nail service worker who was 23 years old and liked to drink and come home late. This caused Jang Manhu to explode in rage. He nearly screamed at Lee Jiwon, wondering how he knew his daughter's name. At that moment, he was ready to pounce on the criminal. He could barely contain himself. He was shaking with rage, and he warned that he would do terrible things if anyone laid a finger on his daughter. This only made Lee Jiwon laugh, and he pointed out that they were planning to kill him anyway. He suggested they stop discussing it and just argue. This conversation seemed absurd. Lee Jiwon wanted to make a bet and see who could kill first, although he still needed Jang Manhu's consent. But he was confident he'd already won one way or another. Chang Manhu couldn't decide what to do. His face was twisted in hatred and rage. Panic gripped his body and mind. He worried for his daughter's life, realizing that Lee Jiwon was insane and could commit such a terrible act again and again. Jang Manhu screamed loudly, naming Lee Jiwon in every way possible. At that moment, he was ready to tear this criminal to shreds. The cafe suddenly fell silent. Only someone's heavy breathing could be heard. Jang Do-suk, acting out his role, rushed up to Kim Hyun-soo, grabbed him by the collar, and was about to hit him. The performance was so believable that even the director worried something bad might happen. Yoo Jong-suk immediately jumped up from the couch and asked Jang Do-suk to calm down. He didn't understand why he was acting so badly during the reading. Hearing Jang Do-suk address him, it was as if he'd returned from another world and was slightly confused about what he was doing. Jang Do-suk himself was taken aback by his behavior. He was overwhelmed with emotion. He was surprised that he was carried away by emotions during a regular reading, especially with such a green newcomer as Kim Hyun-soo. Jang Do-suk released Kim Hyun-soo and returned to the sofa. After catching his breath, he turned to Director Yu. Jang Do-suk apologized well. He said that they should have reshot yesterday's scenes, although this made him even more angry. The director wasn't happy with this statement. He didn't understand why he had to reshoot the approved footage, but Jang Do-suk was also upset that the director didn't understand this. Jang Do-suk shouted online that he couldn't sit still while this greenhorn outdid him. Jang Do-suk wasn't at all pleased that someone so young and inexperienced was outperforming him as an actor. Still, everyone had to organize filming to reshoot scenes that Jang Do-suk was not satisfied with. But upon seeing the new result, Jang Do-suk demanded that the film be res-hot again, which left director Yoo Jong-suk even more perplexed. Jang Do-suk insisted on getting another take and was not going to back down until he got what he was happy with. The director tried to explain to Jang Do-suk that it wasn't a key scene and didn't require so much effort. But he shouted that there were no insignificant prices in the drama and continued to demand another take. The leading lady also noticed this argument. Ju Ina was surprised at how strangely Jang Do-suk behaved and in general noticed that the atmosphere that day was not the same as usual. The girl looked around and confirmed what she had been feeling. Everything around her was different. The strange atmosphere was caused by Kim Hyun-soo. He kept aloof from everyone else, yet everyone present couldn't take their eyes off him. Everyone was talking about the newcomer who replaced Jang Kai-hoon. Kim Hyun-soo was a source of great curiosity among many. Many agreed that Kim Hyun-soo looked like a completely ordinary guy, and no matter how you look at it, he was absolutely no match for Lee Ji-won's character. Everyone was baffled by the fact that he was cast on the direct recommendation of the screenwriter without an audition. Someone heard that the director himself had pushed this young man into the role. Well, after much discussion, everyone agreed that it made no difference, since the point was that the young man had gotten the part through connections. Ju Ina approached the guys who were discussing the newcomer and noted that it was completely unprofessional to have luck with the actor's choice on the set. The guys didn't expect that they could be eavesdropped on and found themselves in a very awkward situation. Ju Ina said that everyone had some dissatisfaction, but if you listen to the guys, the director and screenwriter apparently didn't understand anything at all about choosing actors. The guys immediately started denying that they meant something completely different, but Ju Ina asked them to maintain their image and play their part since they were members of a special police squad and not envious. The guys apologized and wanted to leave, but Ju Ina asked them to stay. I'm surprised that they weren't going to watch the rest of the scene. Ju Ina noted that since they doubted the rookie's acting, They should have watched him since his scene with Jang Do-suk was just about to begin. Soon Kim Hyun-soo and Jang Do-suk were invited to sleep at their positions. The videographers set up their cameras and prepared to begin filming. Jang Do-suk smiled predatorily at Kim Hyun-soo, noting that everything would be different on this shoot. Kim Hyun-soo agreed, noting that he had also learned a lot. He was confident that he could give his best. Filming of the first meeting scene near the police station soon began. The actors were warned that the cameras were about to start recording. Jang Man-woo grinned and suggested out loud that Lee Jae-won had come to the police station to surrender himself. Lee Jae-won smiled as he said that he liked to stab his victims to death and mentioned that he would like to do the same to Jang Man-woo's daughter. The actors' performances were actually even better than they had shown at the reading. Lee Ji-won angered Jang Man-woo by declaring that he shouldn't have expected anyone to agree to commit a crime and that he'd already defeated everyone anyway. Chang Man-woo jumped up to the criminal and grabbed him by the collar, ready to tear him apart on the spot. After filming this scene, everyone was shocked. One of the guys discussing the new actor turned to his friend, who had said the actor had been brought in through connections, wanting to hear what it was like for him to see such connections. Ju Ina, seeing what was happening on the set, was delighted at how captivating Kim Hyun-soo's acting was. She didn't understand how Kim Hyun-soo could become so immersed in the role in just a couple of days. And the girl's happiness even became offensive, since she could not boast of the same skill, although she was not at all considered a newbie in this matter. She thought that if she wasn't careful with Kim Hyun-soo, she might get caught like Jang Do-seok. Kim Hyun-soo was standing and looking at the script when suddenly someone called out to him, asking his opinion about something. Turning around, Kim Hyun-soo discovered Jang Do-suk approaching him. Kim Hyun-soo responded that his colleague's performance was as if he were a completely different person, to which Jang Do-suk smiled and admitted that Kim Hyun-soo had also done a good job in his own style. Kim Hyun-soo looked at Chon Do-suk with slight surprise, understanding what he meant, and he noted that judging by his performance, he was not one of those actors who instinctively immerse themselves in their role, and asked the guy if he was right. Kim Hyun-soo thought about the words about instinctive immersion for a moment and decided that, in a sense, it was indeed on point. Jang Do-suk intended to continue this dialogue, and finding an empty chair, moved it closer to Kim Hyun-soo. Sitting down, Jang Do-suk said that a good actor had to trust the flow but stay afloat, and added that the drama was not a one-man show. Kim Hyun-soo absorbed every word spoken to him, which made him think deeply about it. But Chon Do-suk asked him not to try to delve into the meaning of his words, noting that he would understand everything himself as he interacted with other actors. After a short pause, Chon Do-suk added that the majority of the problem was definitely not Kim Hyun-soo, whose words he did not understand and made explanations for. Chon Do-suk glanced to the side. He surveyed the courtyard, the parked cars, and then looked into the distance toward the mountains. His face frowned, and he admitted that he was more worried about the other inexperienced guys who might get caught up in Kim Hyun-soo's game. Soon more arguments began about retakes. Jang Do-suk was repeatedly dissatisfied with something. He and the director continued arguing for a long time because Yoo Jong-suk was convinced that the scene was filmed perfectly. A little while later, director Yoo Jong-suk noticed Ju Ina's upset look and approached her, asking what had happened. The girl looked completely desperate. Tears kept welling up in her eyes, which she barely held back. She didn't know what words to choose to explain to the director what was happening to her. Jang Man-woo screamed Lee Jae-won's name at the top of his lungs. He couldn't contain himself any longer and wanted to attack the killer. He pushed Lee Jae-won, causing him to fall to the pavement. Jang Man-woo was just a moment away from fulfilling his plan. But to Jang Man-woo's surprise, Detective Jin Yeonmi appeared out of nowhere and sternly ordered the situation to be stopped. The detective was outraged that Chang Man-woo allowed himself to attack a police officer right in front of the police station, and also did not keep silent about the fact that it was still easier for her that way. Chang Man-woo didn't understand what they were talking about. He couldn't believe that this killer was a police officer. He couldn't even imagine it. Lee Jae-won carefully raised himself up and wiped the blood from his split lip, while Chan realized that the guy had not come to surrender to the police but was working in this place. Lee Jae-won stared deeply into Jang Man-woo's eyes. That look already told him everything. Lee Jae-won had won again. Jang Man-woo was shocked that the man he thought was a criminal was actually a cop. Detective Jin Yeonmi quickly handcuffed Jang Man, whose hands noting that it no longer looked like a red-handed surrender, but rather like a full-fledged arrest for a flagrant offense. She looked at Lee Jiwon and asked if he was okay and if it was time for him to retire if he let himself be beaten by such an idiot, but this only made him laugh. Lee Jiwon stood up with a smile and took a few steps towards the prisoner without any hurry. Pushing Jang Manhwa towards the police station, Lee Jiwon said that with the current level of the economy, the less they had to feed the better. Chang Manhwa obediently followed the instructions, but was completely shocked by what happened. The scene was finished filming. Kim Hyun-soo and Jang Do-suk stood in the frame for a moment after the recording stopped, looking rather thoughtful. Kim Hyun-soo thought that everything had happened as he expected from Jang Do-suk. For him, it was something obvious. His thoughts were interrupted by Chan Do-suk, who asked how he assessed his own acting. Kim Hyun-soo glanced at him and replied that it seemed pretty good. Jang Do-suk grimaced again and asked in response whether Kim Hyun-soo had high standards or low self-esteem. Kim Hyun-soo, looking away, replied that he still had a lot to improve on. He felt he could do better, and this greatly upset him. Chon Do-seok turned away, saying that overall it wasn't him he was worth worrying about, and nodded to the side to show something. He looked at the distressed Ju Inu, who stood nearby. It was clear that something was wrong with the girl, and many had already noticed by then. At the time, Ju Ina was thinking about what she had thought before filming, that if she was careful she wouldn't get caught. Jang Do-suk clearly noticed that the girl was struggling to compose herself and was very anxious. He understood why this was happening. After filming, Kim Hyun-soo and Jang Do-suk went to a nearby bar. The newcomer asked Ju-in directly if he was upset with her. Jang Do-suk gave an ambiguous answer and added that one way or another the main character should have figured this out herself, and therefore there was no need to worry about it. Chon Do-suk was more worried about the other inexperienced guys who might get caught up in Kim Hyun-soo's game. Kim Hyun-soo didn't understand what was going on while still on set, but after he noticed the changes in Ju Ina's acting, he immediately understood everything. He realized that his own instinctive acting was too prominent for other actors, but with Jang Do-suk it simply wasn't as noticeable. This upset Kim Hyun-soo. He knew it was too much and doubted it could even be called acting. After observing Kim Hyun-soo, Jang Do-soo noted that he understood his thought process and asked him to understand that there was no need to overdo it, since the drama's cast was also not just anyone, and it was worth simply believing and waiting. Kim Hyun-soo poured himself a glass of soju, and not wanting to click it on Jang Do-suk's glass, assured him that he understood everything. Despite Ju Ina's rather weak performance, filming continued and finally reached the stage where the main character Jin Yunmi begins to suspect Lee Ji-won of involvement in the events of the diary, not without the help of Jang Man-hoo. When Chang Man-hoo pointed this out to her, the detective was shocked and couldn't comprehend how such a thing was even possible. The detective recalled her first meeting with Lee Ji-won, and back then, she couldn't even imagine how things could turn out. He was always attentive to her, worked well, and showed no small amount of courage in any task. His smile always seemed genuine to the detective. Lee Ji-won always tried to protect her and shield her from danger. Events led the detective to the point where she, trembling with fear and anger, directly asked Lee Ji-won who he really was. The next scene was filmed. The director praised the work of the entire crew and actors, and was pleased with the result. After filming, one of the actors approached Ju Ina and smiled and remarked that it would work great, assuring her that he wasn't joking because his legs even buckled. But Ju Ina couldn't even manage to force out anything resembling a smile, and quickly turned away. She approached Kim Hyun-soo, who was thinking hard about something, and asked him if he liked her performance. At that moment, he finally realized what the current problem was. He decided that this problem was not in Ju Ina's game at all, and he cleared his throat and told the girl that his words might sound presumptuous. Kim Hyun-soo looked into Ju-in's eyes and confessed that the game was like an insurmountable wall for him. He waved his hand and asked if Ju Ina realized that her character Jin Yunmi knew about everything from the very beginning. The girl sincerely did not understand what Kim Hyun-soo was getting at, although she tried her best. Kim Hyun-soo explained that it seemed like Jin Yunmi, the detective, had simply succumbed to her inner darkness, but Ju Ina couldn't immediately answer. The drama When Darkness Consumes was first and foremost a drama. As the story progressed, the main character Jin Yunmi gradually lost her free will and determination. She succumbed to the darkness Lee Ji-won hadn't pushed her into, and soon she was completely engulfed. It was likely that deep down Jin Yunmi understood everything, especially that something was wrong with Lee Ji-won. But Jin Yunmi still refused to deny the seeds of doubt in her heart, and that denial remained unchanged even after Jang Manhwa showed her the evidence. Denial after denial bred despair. The helplessness Ju Ina had been feeling lately was the cause of it all. Only by thoroughly understanding the written world could one develop a character within it. Ju Ina, without realizing it, immersed herself in this world, and what she perceived as helplessness was the result of immersing herself in the character of the non-heroine Jin Yunmi. This unconscious level of immersion into the filming world was truly a genius gift, and Ju Ina possessed it without even realizing it. Kim Hyun-soo told Ju Ina that the hesitation she expressed in her acting felt as if the real Yeon-mi was standing in front of him. After thinking for a moment, Ju Ina replied that there was nothing perfect about acting from the start, and everyone generally understood that. It was immediately noticeable that Ju Ina felt much better, and she noted that she was truly glad that she did everything right. Kim Hyun-soo assured the girl with a smile that he truly believed that her acting was simply incredible, and the girl smiled back at him and began to change before his eyes. Chon Do-suk watched them from the side and, smiling to himself, thought how interestingly the events were unfolding. The next scene was Jin Yeon-mi finding Lee Jae-won and attacking him with a gun. Lee Jae-won looked at the detective with indifference and simply said that she could kill him. The atmosphere was very tense. Looking at her with a very cold gaze, Lee Jae-won warned that if the girl did not kill him, then she would die herself. Without taking her sights off Lee Jae-won, Jin Yeon-mi asked why he was asking her to kill herself. She just wanted to scream about it. She was angry and demanded an immediate answer if there was still anything human left in him. Lee Jae-won looked straight into her eyes and remained silent, causing the tension to increase throughout the entire set. Lee Jae-won jerked upright and ran forward towards Jin Yeon-mi, not thinking at that moment, to his great surprise, about the possible consequences. At that very moment, Jin Yeon-mi pulled the trigger, firing the gun. It all happened too fast. Lee Jae-won was already right in front of her. After the shot, he fell into her arms. The girl looked up, horror on her face. Jin Yeon-mi clenched her teeth and trembling whispered, asking why Lee Jae-won had done this. She genuinely couldn't understand why he wanted all this. She screamed, tears welling up in her eyes. She wanted to know what she meant to Lee Jae-won, though she was clearly afraid of his answer. With great difficulty, Lee Jae-won said intermittently that he had felt this since their very first meeting. Jin Yeon-mi was reeling from this answer and didn't know what to say. She sensed it, but she tried too hard to deny it. She tried not to cry and to overcome the trembling that was running through her entire body, but she just couldn't get a grip on herself. Jin Yeon-mi and Lee Jae-won sat on their knees in front of each other, as if they were hugging each other, and remained silent. That was the end of the scene. The director joyfully shouted that it was all over. The cameras stopped recording. Ju Ina whispered to Kim Hyun-soo that Ji-won, the character he played, had put her through so much. For a moment, she still wanted to remain in character. After a brief silence, Ju Ina asked Kim Hyun-soo if he thought Ji-won had ever loved Yeon-mi even a little. She was overwhelmed by the scene and overwhelmed with emotion. Kim Hyun-soo thought deeply about this and recalled all the feelings he'd felt in his dreams. He hadn't felt a drop of love, compassion, or excitement there. He knew that Lee Jae-won could no longer be saved and answered Ju in what he thought that Yeon-mi did not like. Director Yoo Jong-suk loudly applauded and shouted that the actors were simply not imaginary and played their roles perfectly in this scene. After filming, the director personally approached Kim Hyun-soo and, putting his arm around his shoulder, praised his excellent work, noting that it was thanks to him that they finished even earlier than expected. Kim Hyun-soo thanked the director in return for allowing him to study day after day and even be cast in the film adaptation. The director then recalled Jang Do-suk's words about the protagonist's modesty, and then noted that he would like to talk about the trailer. Director Yoo Jong-suk said with a smile that as scriptwriter Gu suggested, the thriller will use the scene of Ji-won's first appearance in the forest, and the screening will take place in early next month, and they will be able to release the trailer as early as next weekend. Kim Hyun-soo was shocked and asked again if the trailer would definitely only contain a scene with him, believing that it was worth showing the main character. Ju Ina intervened during this conversation and noted that given the overall atmosphere of the drama, this scene was a very good choice, and that the scriptwriter had done the right thing. She also asked not to worry about her, pointing out that she wasn't offended. Kim Hyun-soo wanted to object, but he was immediately calmed down by explaining that there was no other scene that could reveal the essence of the drama better than this one, and they advised Kim Hyun-soo to be proud of himself. A week later, the official trailer for the drama When Darkness Absorbs aired. Immediately, a ton of comments about the main character garnered attention. Many realized the actor was a newcomer, but everyone praised his performance. Sensing the general mood of netizens, the production team decided to squeeze the most out of Lee Ji-won's videos, so they actively published clips and shorts. Thus, views skyrocketed to 300,000 within a week, an incredibly significant achievement for a film without industry stars. The face of the unknown actor Kim Hyun-soo quickly became recognized across Korea. During one of Kim Hyun-soo's appearances at home, he was greeted with jokes and shouts that the great actor had finally honored them with his presence. The whole family greeted him with joy and even bowed before him. They called him their little star, which embarrassed him immensely. Kim Hyun-soo walked further into the apartment and greeted his mother, who was preparing dinner at that time. The woman smiled at him, slightly surprised that her son had come to the screen. Right in front of him appeared his sister, who was indignant that her brother had almost ignored her, and that he should have greeted her properly, which made him laugh lightly. His sister smiled, noting that Yumi had been waiting for him for a long time. She was Hyun-soo's younger sister. As soon as Kim Hyun-soo saw her, he immediately handed her a small package. The girl laughed loudly and emphasized that she had asked him not to give her anything, but Kim Hyun-soo, already taking off his jacket, noted that the semester had just begun. She probably didn't have enough money, which he put in the bag. The girl grimaced, noting that this was the life of the sister of a successful actor, but Kim Hyun-soo immediately stopped her, reminding her that he was not. Kim Hyun-soo was very pleased to hear such admiration from his family. He still thought that he was not good enough for such words. Mom quickly set the table and everyone sat down to dinner. Kim Hyun-soo respectfully thanked Mom for her efforts. His sister, surprised to see her brother wolfing down food, asked if he was fed on set. Kim Hyun-soo replied that he was, but the food tasted completely different. He then asked his mother if she'd considered cooking for the crew. The sister looked at her watch. It was already 10 o'clock p.m., and noted that the show was apparently about to start. The whole family sat around the television. Yumi was still thrilled at what her brother would see on TV, which was hard to believe considering they were a perfectly ordinary family. Kim Hyun-soo waited with a smile for the show to begin and admitted that he himself couldn't really believe that they would actually show it. A moment later, one of the channels began broadcasting the first episode of the drama. The whole family held their breath. No one said a word until the episode ended. The time seemed to drag on forever. For Kim Hyun-soo's entire family, as well as for himself, it was a huge breakthrough. When the first episode ended, Yumi was still stunned and could hardly express her emotions about what she had seen. Still, she was able to say that she found the drama very interesting, and so much so that it simply took her breath away. She turned to her brother and asked when they would show him too. Kim Hyun-soo smiled and explained that he wouldn't appear until the third episode. Yumi was certainly delighted. She even said he'd come to visit them too early and should have come only a week later when the episode featuring him aired. To which her mother suggested out loud that Yumi was simply trying to coax another gift from her brother. Yumi objected to this and said that in her opinion Hyun-soo should have been shown on TV since the whole family had gathered like this. Kim Hyun-soo paused for a moment and called out to his mother, who asked with a little trepidation, "What does he want to say?" He smiled and said that he had finally managed to become an actor. At that moment he was incredibly proud of himself and knew that his loved ones shared this feeling with him. The woman's eyes widened and she looked at her son carefully. She knew it too, but there was something different in her eyes. The woman said that her son had always been an actor, and she had always considered him a star just like his father. Hyun-soo's mother, holding back tears, said that if only his father could see his son now, he would definitely burst into tears of happiness. Kim Hyun-soo was very pleased to hear these words, and it was very pleasant to think about his father, who would definitely be proud of him. Having calmed down a bit, Mom asked Hyun-soo how things were with pocket money. Kim Hyun-soo remarked that he'd sent it last week, to which his mother responded that he had indeed, and quite solemnly asked him to work harder and become even better. Hyun-soo was certain that was exactly how things would turn out. Some time later, Kim Hyun-soo's phone rang. The director's name appeared on the screen. Yoo Jong-suk asked how actor Kim was doing and said he and screenwriter Gu and manager Ju had been drinking while watching the first episode. Gu Eun-ju immediately greeted him, followed by the manager's annoyance that the call had been too late. Kim Hyun-soo went into the next room and noted that he also watched the first episode of the drama with his family. He was asked if he'd seen the viewership ratings for the first episode, to which Kim Hyun-soo replied that he hadn't yet. The director noted that this was precisely why he'd called and warned him not to lose heart after seeing it. He carefully explained that the statistics contained exorbitant figures including 11.8%. Upon hearing this, Kim Hyun-soo froze in place in complete shock. Some dramas started and ended with fractions of a percent ratings, and double-digit ratings were an incredible jackpot, as even before the commercials started the headlines were full of the drama's name, even though the star of the show was still to come. The director couldn't stop talking about it. This rating was already there before Hyun-soo even appeared on camera, which shocked the entire production crew. At that moment, Kim Hyun-soo realized he'd starred in a true hit, meaning he could soon be inundated with scripts. This certainly meant his upward trajectory would continue. Kim Hyun-soo went to a beer bar where he hadn't been for a long time, and when he saw the sign, he involuntarily smiled. He walked inside the establishment and immediately made eye contact with Hyo Yeonjin, who was delighted to see his comrade. He also introduced another of his friends, actor Kim Hyun-soo, who was able to find time to come to them. Hyo Yeonjin smiled wider than anyone else and reminded them that he had promised to help them get through. He noted that from now on his friend would be very busy and that they should at least eat their fill on this day. Kim Hyun-soo agreed with him and noted that this was a just cause. Sitting down, Kim Hyun-soo announced that he would pay for the second round today, then immediately changed his mind and decided to pay until the third. The whole company immediately sat down at the table and made their orders. With the first glasses of beer, they decided to toast the promising newcomer's successful progress toward the award. The first thing Hyo Yeonjin did was ask Kim Hyun-soo when the next project would be, to which he replied that only a week had passed since the broadcast of this one, and there was no talk of anything else. Hyo Yeonjin grimaced slightly and remarked that's precisely why he was asking. Kim Hyun-soo didn't quite understand what they were talking about. Hyo Yeonjin explained that although only a week had passed, the public's reaction had already taken shape, and as soon as Lee Ji-won appeared on air, there was a guarantee that views would skyrocket again. Hyo Yeonjin assured that this was exactly what his intuition as an experienced industry worker was telling him, and that Kim Hyun-soo should have kept his phone handy and was preparing to seize his chances. At that very moment, a call came from Kim Hyun-soo's phone. Both guys immediately looked at the phone. This was very strange because they had just been talking about phone calls. Kim Hyun-soo was surprised and asked if Hyo Yeonjin had accidentally learned to cast spells, and why he had rushed his friend to answer the call, that it could have been someone very important calling. Kim Hyun-soo thought this was complete nonsense, but he still picked up the phone with particular care and looked at the screen. The call was from Ju Ina. Kim Hyun-soo was even more surprised, having an idea why the girl was calling him at such a late hour. One of the girls at the table, seeing the actress's signature on Kim Hyun-soo's phone, jumped up, amazed that they were already communicating on equal terms with such a famous actress. The girl asked everyone at the table to be silent, noting that actor Kim Hyun-soo had to talk to his colleague Ju Ina, which put him in a very awkward position. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Kim Hyun-soo cleared his throat and picked up the phone. The first thing Ju Ina asked was where he was. He replied that he'd been in Daehangno, and Ju Ina noted that she'd been right nearby and that her agency's office was there. Kim Hyun-soo reacted particularly coldly to this, which surprised her, but she immediately led the conversation and asked what exactly he'd been doing. Hyun-soo told me he'd been drinking with Young Jin and some other guys from his college. Ju-in remembered their publicist and suddenly fell silent. Apparently plucking up her courage, Ju-ina asked if she could join Kim Hyun-soo's company and whether she would interfere with them. Of course, no one was against meeting such an actress, and they happily invited her to join their company. Ju Ina arrived very quickly, and after greeting everyone, introduced herself, noting that she really hoped that they were not offended by her sudden appearance. Kim Hyun-soo asked the girl what brought her to them, to which she reminded him that she was also an actress in a drama, and perhaps it was worth helping her promote it. Kim Hyun-soo was even a little upset when he heard this answer, because he thought that the reason was completely different. Ju Ina fit perfectly into the overall atmosphere, and the celebration continued. By the end of the bar party, everyone was quite drunk. The guys who were Kim Hyun-soo's friends were loudly saying goodbye to the actress, hoping they would meet again someday. Ju Ina shouted to them that they would definitely meet again, because she was a close friend of Hyun-soo. Kim Hyun-soo stood a little distance away and laughed loudly watching this funny scene, and he was also very pleased that Ju Ina said that she was his good friend. After Ju Ina and Kim Hyun-soo were left alone, she admitted that she was very worried about exchanging him, and then suggested that they take a short walk together, to which Kim Hyun-soo happily agreed. Ju Ina remarked that she had genuinely enjoyed herself. Hyun-soo responded by congratulating her on becoming the star of his university group. She apologized, noting that she hadn't intentionally gotten carried away reminiscing about their time together, and explained that things had faded away due to her old friends. She sadly noted that it was very difficult for her to meet new people, and that even actresses her age ignored her, and then asked how Kim Hyun-soo was doing. But instead of answering her question, Kim Hyun-soo said that she could come and communicate with his company at any time, which surprised the girl. He turned to her with a more serious expression on his face and repeated that the girl could come whenever she wanted. This seemed to upset her even more, and she fell silent. After waiting a bit, Kim Hyun-soo called out to her, wanting to find out what had happened, and was very worried about her. Ju Ina continued walking silently, and soon a smile spread across her face and Kim Hyun-soo became even more confused. Ju Ina laughed loudly, explaining she was just joking. She played it perfectly this time too. Kim Hyun-soo was a little indignant and said that this joke was not funny at all, to which Ju Ina noted that her skills had improved and he had to agree with this because he had some credit for this. Without slowing down, Kim Hyun-soo asked what exactly his merit was, but Ju Ina stopped. Her face grew serious again, and she said she wanted to state something directly. She looked into Kim Hyun-soo's eyes and said that she would like to continue working with him. This really took the young man by surprise. He even opened his mouth in surprise and asked the girl to repeat what she meant. Ju Ina gave a light laugh, wondering why Kim Hyun-soo was so embarrassed. The girl extended her hand towards him, intending to explain what she meant, hoping that her new friend's embarrassment would subside a little. Ju Ina stood opposite Kim Hyun-soo and spread her arms wide. A sly smile appeared on her face and her eyes sparkled even through her tinted glasses. Kim Hyun-soo glanced back. His gaze fell on one of the tall buildings behind Ju Ina, where only the top floor was illuminated. After thinking for a moment, Kim Hyun-soo asked Ju Ina if the actors were seriously recruiting other actors, to which the girl put her hands on her hips and replied that such a thing was impossible. I understand Kim Hyun-soo's confusion. Ju Ina explained that the director had asked her to do this. The director really wanted to establish a connection with him. This surprised Kim Hyun-soo even more because the director didn't even see his performance, but Ju Ina interrupted him and said that the director did see everything. The director managed to see the newcomer's performance on the first day of his audition, and she also came to the set several times after that. After another short pause, Ju Ina asked if Kim Hyun-soo could meet the director once, causing him to lose consciousness in shock. Despite his nervousness, Kim Hyun-soo naturally agreed to meet with the director, and at the appointed time arrived at the cafe where their meeting was to take place. He arrived first, and soon the director herself arrived. The girl greeted him, and a wave of anxiety washed over him again. The director looked very young, and from her clothes it was difficult to tell that this girl was in such a serious position. Woo Ji-yoon was the director of Sunrise. She smiled at Kim Hyun-soo and sat down at the table. Kim Hyun-soo had heard before their meeting that Woo Ji-yoon was almost 40 years old, but he was surprised that she looked much younger than her age and did not at all resemble the agency director. Seeing Kim Hyun-soo's expression, Woo Ji-yoon herself said that she seemed more like a manager, and the guy probably thought so when he saw her. She emphasized that she was an ordinary person and that this was exactly how she started before founding the company, and with the same casual smile she suggested returning to the topic of their meeting. Kim Hyun-soo felt terribly awkward and thought that she really was some kind of evil spirit since she could read other people's thoughts so easily. Woo Ji-yoon noted that their group was dressed casually. She immediately apologized for keeping them waiting, to which Kim Hyun-soo asked her not to worry, explaining that he himself had arrived early because he lived nearby. Woo Ji-yoon silently handed him the business card, sliding it across the table. This business card was from Voskhod. It was clear this meeting wasn't just about getting to know each other and discussing possible future collaborations. Voskhod was a relatively new acting agency with an impressive roster of young talent headed by Ju Ina. With the success of several newcomers they managed, business took off. Actors we hadn't helped eventually became stars of Chungmuro one after another. Woo Ji-yoon said that Kim Hyun-soo should have known that Voskhod was an agency that grew up with young artists, and therefore they were well versed in how to best develop the careers and potential of young people. Kim Hyun-soo looked the girl straight in the eyes and listened to her attentively, trying to predict what she would say next. When the girl finished speaking, Kim Hyun-soo noted that he knew the director had attended his audition, which would mean they'd known about him for over 6 months. He asked why she hadn't contacted him yet. Woo Ji-yoon replied that the thing was that it was a turning point for him and she didn't want to interrupt his mood in the game with her interference. Woo Ji-yoon stated that she would be with him and openly said that given his potential many more industry professionals would likely contact him in the future. Woo Ji-yoon said that given his skill not only for the sunrise he would be a very desirable employee. Kim Hyun-soo was pleased to hear this from the agency director, but he sincerely didn't understand how he should react to these words. The director continued speaking and emphasized that she could not say that the best conditions awaited him at her agency, but she could still promise one thing. She stated that they always accommodate their actors under any circumstances. Kim Hyun-soo was even more stunned. He couldn't understand what the director's words meant. Woo Ji-yoon continued speaking and explained that she wasn't insisting on an immediate answer and that they simply wanted to make their mark and recognize the young man's potential. After some thought, Kim Hyun-soo agreed that she wasn't ready to announce her decision yet. He promised that he would definitely think about it and contact the director, and she hoped out loud that she would only expect good news. This weekend, episodes 3 and 4 featuring Lee Jae-won were released. His appearance sent ratings soaring to a record-breaking 13%. Just like the media, the reaction to Hyun-soo's performance was incredible. Even industry professionals took notice. Some people only realized they had seen scenes of his acting, and the audience's reaction and interest in him began to gain momentum. Soon as Woo Ji-yoon predicted, Hyun-soo was inundated with offers from other agencies, and his phone number quickly spread through the industry's internal channels. Various companies tried to contact him. First, they were network companies with their own agencies and good scripts to work with. They offered him numerous excellent works that hadn't yet been adapted for the screen and promised to never experience any shortcomings in projects. Secondly, all sorts of agencies established in the industry and possessing a certain experience, recognition, and reputation promised to achieve recognition in the acting profession through work in a prestigious company promising to provide excellent conditions for building a career. Hyun-soo was also contacted by a rather powerful company that had a huge influence in the Korean entertainment industry with the largest capital and connections. They noted that usually the share of new actors in their projects was half, but they were ready to offer Hyun-soo 60%. He was also guaranteed that the level of support their company provides is unmatched by competitors, and that he will be provided with the best industry specialists, personal vans, and even a personal manager. Kim Hyun-soo honestly admitted to himself that he had some doubts about the feasibility of what he had voiced. He replayed all his scenes, his performance in his head. All the proposals he had received swarmed in his head and made it difficult for him to make any choice. But he also remembered the words of Woo Ji-yoon, who emphasized that her agency always went to meet its actors no matter what the circumstances. Kim Hyun-soo tried to make a decision for a long time, and at some point he finally collected his thoughts. He picked up the phone and quickly dialed the number he needed. When they picked up the phone, he quickly stated that he was ready to sign the contract. Woo Ji-yoon greeted the news with a smile and promised that she would never regret choosing to become a member of the Sunrise family. The next day, he went to sign a contract with the agency. They explained to him that the contract would be drawn up for 3 years with a fixed share of 70 to 30%. Once the schedule issue was resolved, a manager and a vehicle would be provided. Upon hearing this, Kim Hyun-soo noted that the conditions were even better than he had expected. He was told that in his case, having already become a recognizable figure online and in the media, this was necessary. Kim Hyun-soo was very surprised that they wanted to provide him with a vehicle and even a personal manager. He shared with Woo Ji-yoon that it all seemed completely unreal to him. Woo Ji-yoon glanced at him and smiled slightly. She was glad that an actor like Kim Hyun-soo was pleased with her proposal. Woo Ji-yoon placed another stack of papers next to the contract. She smiled again and noted that everything was much more real than Kim Hyun-soo could have imagined. Kim Hyun-soo felt very confused at that moment and did not understand how his life would develop further. Kim Hyun-soo just froze for a moment, trying to comprehend what he was seeing and hearing. In front of him lay a folder of papers. It was a film script for a film he had already been offered a role in. Woo Ji-yoon explained that among the jobs the company had recently been offered, she selected those that best suited Kim Hyun-soo's requirements. She noted that his acting skills were very impressive, but they were not yet well known among industry professionals. Crossing her legs, Woo Ji-yoon emphasized that in this case the best way to get a good job was to audition. She argued that things could easily change after the drama ended, and that she believed it was best to gain experience on her own initiative rather than patiently wait for incoming offers. She took one of the stacks and asked if Kim Hyun-soo wanted to look at the script, and said that it was a romantic comedy. Kim Hyun-soo was very surprised because he had never auditioned for such films in his life, and the romance genre in general was new to him. Kim Hyun-soo wanted to complain that making him the hero of a romantic comedy wasn't the best option, but Woo Ji-yoon explained that he would have to play the role of the villain as and when the darkness consumes him. He was confident in the role of the villain, and Woo Ji-yoon explained that his character was a sociopath who constantly plotted against the two main characters. It was a fairly popular plot device, and the scriptwriter was a promising writer who had already shown good results. A certain level of audience sympathy was guaranteed, and it was a stable choice for Kim Hyun-soo. The role was similar to Lee Ji-won's, which was also a good thing as viewers often had a certain image of the actor they were looking for. Woo Ji-yoon suggested looking at another scenario in which the role was played by a completely opposite character. Lee Ji-won was definitely confident in playing a villain like Lee Ji-won and couldn't imagine himself playing anyone else at all. The script was written by Yoo Hae-seo, a master of the film industry, who debuted with a short series on the HBS Weekly Masterpieces in 1996. He primarily wrote dramatic stories with pressing social issues and was considered a writer with a special flair for knowing when to reach the public's heart. Writer Yoo Hae-seo was used to working with her favorite cast and was also known for choosing actors to write scenes for in advance, so it was quite unusual for her to organize an audition this time. Kim Hyun-soo agreed that it was apparently a very rare opportunity for him, and Woo Ji-yoon added that the writer was usually happy to take their actors, so they snatched this opportunity. In this film, the paths of lost children crossed in a small town where they tried to heal each other's wounds and overcome adversity together in a completely different setting. Woo Ji-yoon noted that as stated the role was a complete contrast and she would have to play a character completely different from her previous work. Kim Hyun-soo, after thinking for a bit, said that based on this he already understood what kind of drama it would be and what password they would assign him in it. Woo Ji-yoon revealed that the writer was also known for being able to rework the plot during filming after observing the atmosphere and the actors' performances. Woo Ji-yoon also added that they only had rough drafts of the first episode, but Kim Hyun-soo's role in it was undetermined. Hearing this, Kim Hyun-soo was slightly taken aback. Woo Ji-yoon advised him to challenge Hae-seo's work, because this drama might not have such a sharp social aspect as the others. But if he manages to act well, he will be recognized as a serious actor. These words made Kim Hyun-soo think seriously. There really was a lot at stake. Woo Ji-yoon said that however, as the darkness was only gaining momentum, his value as an actor had only increased and he had no need to rush. Kim Hyun-soo thanked the director for her opinion, and she promised that once he made his decision she would support his choice in every way. The enormous ship was sinking. Rescuers tried to reach it as quickly as possible and help the people. Many of the ship's passengers were already in the water and were very lucky to survive until rescue boats arrived. The guy was pulled out of the water, and as soon as he was on board, rescuers began trying to help him and provided first aid. One of the guys was thinking in his mind that he had to save at least one more. A girl named Han approached him from behind and asked why he was going to do this. She screamed with tears in her eyes, "I don't understand why the young man was going to go there," but he could hardly find the right words to explain everything to her. The girl demanded to be heard. She said the rescue team was already on its way and he should stop and wait for them. She didn't want to let him go. She continued to scream that she didn't want to listen to anything and demanded that he just stay next to her. She begged him with all her might to listen to her. The guy approached the girl and hugged her tightly. He tried to calm her down, but he knew he couldn't listen to her and stay. He explained to her that if he left he could save at least one more human life, but the girl continued to cry, not wanting to let him go. He reminded Haeon that he grew up on the island and asked the girl not to worry, noting that they were not that far from the shore and nothing terrible could happen. Han continued to cry, saying she was still completely against it. But the guy didn't listen to her and let go of her embrace and left. He was a senior sergeant named Lee Jun-hyuk, a deep-sea diver with the Marine Rescue Service, and he knew it was his duty to join in rescuing the passengers. He stepped forward with complete confidence, and then everything went dark. Kim Hyun-soo jumped up in his bed in utter terror. It was another nightmare that seemed to have come true. Kim Hyun-soo couldn't immediately come to his senses. He was completely Colorado and he sat up in bed. Looking around, Kim Hyun-soo realized he'd woken up and that everything had been fake. The anxiety began to subside little by little. Hyun-soo clutched his head. He was surprised and at the same time glad to be alive and unharmed. This dream was terribly emotional and very real. Hyun-soo felt as if he had actually lived through everything he'd dreamed. But comparing it to his past dreams, he realized that this one was different. Having woken up and regained his composure, Kim Hyun-soo began to look through the pink-covered script. He carefully studied everything they had provided him. He was thinking about how as soon as he learned about the new project he had a dream. It was prompted by the question of whether the changes to the project and the Foundation's content were ever connected. Everything that was happening caused him many questions as well as an unknown anxiety. Kim Hyun-soo threw the script next to him on the bed thinking that this was all a big problem and that there was no way he could act properly under these conditions. Getting out of bed and walking over to the table where his laptop was, Kim Hyun-soo mentally apologized to Woo Ji-yoon for the fact that this scenario was completely unsuitable for him and that he needed a work that expressed the experiences and emotions from the dream. First, Kim Hyun-soo decided to look up information about his dream and started typing a query in the search bar. He thought that an accident at sea was not at all uncommon and there would certainly be records left. He soon found an article about an accident on a large ship in western waters off the coast. Article contained up-to-date facts about the 1993 accident. A passenger ship sank off the west coast of Incheon. 372 passengers were thrown overboard, of which only 71 were rescued. In other words, the death toll was 301. Kim Hyun-soo, upon learning of this, began searching for even more information. This was no mere minor incident. His hands trembled from the fortunate facts he learned while rereading articles and news headlines of the time. Kim Hyun-soo sat staring at his laptop monitor. He was shaking all over. He was searching for a connection with his son and found too much. He whispered barely audibly that he had to save at least one more person. Horror gripped him. Kim Hyun-soo struggled to contain his emotions, which were simply boiling within him. He grabbed his head, realizing how dangerous the whole situation was becoming. He lightly hit himself on the head, trying to clear his thoughts and come to some kind of decision. Suddenly, the phone rang, causing Kim Hyun-soo to jump out of her chair. This conversation was very important to Kim Hyun-soo. He decided to speak up about everything. Woo Ji-yoon was shocked to be so suddenly asked to find a suitable script. She genuinely didn't understand what Kim Hyun-soo meant. Kim Hyun-soo brought out 2 cups of coffee for himself, and Woo Ji-yoon saying that he understood that his request sounded absurd, but clarified that it was very important to him. Woo Ji-yoon, completely at a loss, noted that perhaps her words were impolite to pronounce, but she would like to know the specific reason for such a decision. Taking a deep breath, Kim Hyun-soo said that through his university connections he had heard rumors that a drama was being filmed. He said that they were talking about the plot and the integrity of the picture was at the highest level, and therefore he could not resist and really wanted to at least take a look at it. Woo Ji-yoon smiled broadly and asked if it was because he was greedy for the plot. That reason suited her just fine. Woo Ji-yoon gave Kim Hyun-soo a friendly pat on the shoulder, noting that he should have told her everything right away, and that all the dinners were out of place. Woo Ji-yoon raised an eyebrow and was indignant that Kim Hyun-soo seemed to have no faith in her abilities, but she noted that overall she hadn't really shown anything which was normal. She asked him point-blank if he wanted to test her directorial skills, but he denied it, assuring her that wasn't the point. After a moment's thought, Woo Ji-yoon promised to find him a suitable plot and even prepare a contract. Well, I asked for clarification of the details, and Kim Hyun-soo explained that it was an incident on the coast of Incheon where a ship sank, and noted that of course the script could have taken this incident as a basis or somehow referenced it. Woo Ji-yoon sighed and emphasized that before they got down to signing the contracts, Kim Hyun-soo had something to do. When Kim Hyun-soo asked what was required of him, the director asked about his plans for the next day. Kim Hyun-soo had another meeting scheduled very soon. It was a very pleasant sunny day. Arriving at the meeting place, Kim Hyun-soo found himself being met by a man named Go Jen, who introduced himself as his manager and stated that from now on they would work together. Kim Hyun-soo was very impressed and wanted to ask about some details regarding this manager, but Woo Ji-yoon, who had come out by this time, explained that this man would serve faithfully and truly because he had been with her since the founding of the company. The manager winked at Kim Hyun-soo and said that Ja Young-won, Ji Young-won, Ju Ina, and other outstanding actors and actresses all started out with him. After this, they bowed to each other and promised to work hard from now on and thanked each other. But suddenly Go Jen twitched slightly. He was deeply worried, remembering that the director had sent him on a specific task. Go Jen thought that he was sent to a budding actor who would make a name for himself with one drama, but Kim Hyun-soo seemed like an innocent guy who hadn't yet been corrupted by the industry, which made him very happy. Guo clearly saw the personality of the new actor, and according to his experience, actors with this kind of demeanor worked well and succeeded in their careers. Guo waved his hand with a wide smile and asked Kim Hyun-soo to jump into the car since they had a very busy schedule and needed to go on business already. Kim Hyun-soo was very confused when he saw where the manager had taken him. Seeing the nervousness on the actor's face, Guo realized that this was probably Kim Hyun-soo's first portfolio shoot. Guo also noted that he understood that Kim Hyun-soo had probably been feeling out of sorts all day. Very soon a girl approached them and was very happy to see manager Go because they did not see each other that often. The girl smiled and remarked that he was always a welcome guest. The girl was a studio photographer named Gina. Guo called the girl sister and reminded her that he wasn't even really a manager, to which she pointed out that in 5 years of service, he could have advanced to project leader, and then said that she was always glad to see him but was upset that he was constantly rushing around everywhere. They placed her hands at her sides and the girl looked around. She decided to get down to business and asked where the actor she was supposed to photograph was. The manager was a little surprised as Kim Hyun-soo was supposed to be standing next to him. The girl turned her gaze to Kim Hyun-soo, looking at his from head to toe, and grimaced slightly, as if she expected to see someone else. After briefly glancing at Kim Hyun-soo, Gina screamed and immediately covered her mouth with her hands. She apologized and explained that his image was very different from what he had on screen. He looked completely different. Gina immediately noticed that this actor was a different person with a different look and atmosphere. She couldn't even believe it was really the same person. Kim Hyun-soo felt very awkward and asked the girl if everything was okay. He couldn't understand what had made her act like that. Gina realized that she had really puzzled Kim Hyun-soo, which I shouldn't have done, and decided to get straight to the point and asked if he had experience filming for a portfolio, to which the actor replied that he had filmed for himself while he was without an agency. Gina explained that her shoot would be a little different from a solo shoot and noted that the portfolio shoot involved 4 stages. Gina explained that her job included coordinating the concept, coordinating the shoot, preparing the outfit, hair and makeup, and the shoot itself. After thinking for a bit, Gina asked Kim Hyun-soo if he had any concept or if I should not be involved in the shoot, to which he hesitantly noted that the director had mentioned this yesterday and he had had time to think for a bit. Gina smiled, noting that Woo Ji-yoon was as always in her element. Kim Hyun-soo felt even more uncomfortable, but he assured her that this did not mean he was being frivolous about filming, but rather that the expert understood the matter more than he did. The locksmith's smile faded, and she asked if he was leaving the work of an expert to an expert, which was quite a difficult request. The girl emphasized that this was indeed the case, but she was always glad to hear such things and winked. She took her tablet and opened several scenes from the drama, saying that she had planned the basis from the moment the request itself came in. She stated that firstly there would be soft light tones that match the natural personality of actor Kim, and secondly a natural atmosphere but with a focus on portrait photography and a professional facial expression. Gina also wanted to take a few photos to contrast with Lee Jae-won's intimidating personality, worried the actor might not agree. But Kim Hyun-soo, who didn't really know anything about him, asked what exactly he should do. Gina smiled and explained that Kim Hyun-soo just had to put on a scary face, to which he replied that he could easily handle it. Gina smiled and suggested that they get to work right away so as not to waste time. The girl prepared everything for her work, set up the lighting, and began the actual shooting. She tried to give it her all because this was the actor's first serious shoot on which a lot depended. The girl tried to choose the best angles and catch the lighting. She was going around and around trying to do the maximum and get an incredible result. She was even curious how Kim Hyun-soo was able to achieve such a creepy performance with such simple facial features. She thought that he truly had the face of a chimera, as many people had said. But she couldn't understand one thing. It seemed to her that with each photo he became a completely different person, which caused some difficulties. At some point Gina stopped and looked at Kim Hyun-soo for a moment, deciding to say something that was unexpected even for herself. She wanted to interrupt filming for a short while, and I really hope that the actor won't mind. Kim Hyun-soo naturally gave his consent, and the girl immediately went to the computer. She thought for a long time, looking through the photographs she had received. She was intrigued by the actor's eyes. In each photo, Kim Hyun-soo had a completely different look. After thinking a little more, she called Kim Hyun-soo over to her for just a minute. She showed him 2 pictures and asked if the actor himself saw the difference between them. Kim Hyun-soo looked at the pictures carefully and said that in his opinion they were very similar, but Gina asked him to take a closer look. She pointed to the first photo, noting that in it Kim Hyun-soo looked just like Lee Jae-won. She picked up another photo and noted that in this one he looked more like his usual self. Gina also began to show other photos, noting that in each of them Kim Hyun-soo's personality seemed to change. Gui-jen approached them. He also looked at the photos and was surprised. He thought they looked like they were the same, and one of the girls working with them confirmed this. But Kim Hyun-soo could understand what the photographer was talking about. He saw that there was a clear difference. He didn't know how good or bad it was, but he promised the photographer that he would be more careful in the future. Gina looked at him and asked if he had really understood the difference, but Kim Hyun-soo rather hesitantly assured him that perhaps he had. Gina smiled and explained that it wasn't that it was wrong, and she didn't need any corrections. But she wanted Kim Hyun-soo to try to combine these two images, somehow being sure that they would get something very interesting, although Kim Hyun-soo did not understand how he was supposed to do it. Gina explained that he just had to think about how to combine the opposing concepts that they had already discussed, and if he could combine the pleasant impression that Hyun-soo gives and the dark atmosphere around Lee Jae-won on his face, it would be great. She called it a two-faced Janice and was absolutely delighted just by the thought that they would actually get such a result. Kim Hyun-soo was unsure but promised that they would try their best to do as he was asked. Gina asked him to let her know when he was ready, and Kim Hyun-soo went to the background and stood in front of the camera. The talented young photographer couldn't understand one thing when she saw Kim Hyun-soo in the frame. Both personalities she noticed in Kim Hyun-soo weren't his at all. Gina couldn't figure out how that was possible. Each individual photo seemed to show a different person, a different personality, completely different from the real Kim Hyun-soo. Each time she noticed new features in everyone and felt a different mood. But at the same time she also saw Kim Hyun-soo himself, who was a rather simple, nice-looking guy and in real life seemed to have nothing in common with how he looked on camera. But one way or another they had to continue working and do everything possible to get a pleasantly shocking result. And Kim Hyun-soo tried very hard to show what Gina asked for. After filming with Gina, Kim Hyun-soo went to the East office to meet with director Woo Ji-yoon. The girl smiled at him and asked what he had done that had alarmed the photographer. Woo Ji-yoon noted that Gina was absolutely smitten, but she couldn't understand how Kim Hyun-soo had managed it. She hadn't seen Gina like this in a long time, especially since the photographer even said she was willing to photograph Kim Hyun-soo absolutely for free. Recalling the photo shoot and how Gina couldn't stop taking pictures and kept asking for more, Kim Hyun-soo noted that he most likely won't need photos anytime soon. Woo Ji-yoon looked through the photographs and said that looking at them, she seemed to understand Gina. After reviewing the actor's latest portfolio, Woo Ji-yoon decided to tell him why she invited him to the meeting. She placed a blue folder on the table in front of him and announced that she had finally found the script he was looking for. Kim Hyun-soo immediately perked up, immediately feeling that he was being given what he asked for. Woo Ji-yoon admitted that she had found the script a week ago but had postponed the discussion because she needed to confirm something. The director said with particular heaviness that she was ultimately against this work. Kim Hyun-soo was a little confused and asked the director what exactly she meant when she said she was against this job. Woo Ji-yoon noted that they had good investment and filming conditions and also had a high-quality script, but nevertheless there were certain problems. The director showed one finger and said that firstly, despite the conditions by media standards, their production was rather weak. Then Woo Ji-yoon noted that secondly, the independent director who makes films for himself was apparently filming his first commercial project. Woo Ji-yoon also noted that she had looked at his work and it had a distinctly authoritarian feel to it. The director was very displeased with this. Kim Hyun-soo concluded instead that the project apparently wasn't profitable. Woo Ji-yoon stood up with a very serious expression and nodded slightly, a sign of confirmation of what Kim, the director, told me to initially think it would be a disaster film given that the plot involved a sunken ship. But it turned out to be about something completely different, and she handed the script to Kim Hyun-soo. The project was called Blue Figure. The title didn't immediately hint at what the film might be about. The film's protagonist Solar was a girl who couldn't forget her lover Gong-hoo, who died 10 years earlier on the beach. 20 years later, she took a trip with friends to the beach, where she said goodbye to her beloved, and discovered an ice figure resembling him. The film began with the statue talking to her, which led Kim Hyun-soo to believe the film was a romantic fantasy. Woo Ji-yoon noted that in romantic films, as a rule, the secondary characters were not particularly important. This meant that Kim Hyun-soo's appearance in this film had to be in the leading role. It was unclear whether they had any choice at all. Woo Ji-yoon also noted that given the meager production, even the lead role might not have brought in good revenue, and she gently asked if Kim Hyun-soo still wanted to participate. Without any hesitation, Kim Hyun-soo firmly stated that he still wanted to participate, and still remembered the words the director told him on the day of signing the contract. Woo Ji-yoon realized that she would still have to answer for her words and support the new actor in his idea. She forced a smile onto her face and assured that her agency would be on the actor's side under any circumstances. Kim Hyun-soo said that the payment was not so important to him, and that it would be enough for him to be able to play the desired role, which greatly pleased the director. She asked Kim Hyun-soo not to misunderstand her, because it was not that she did not trust his decisions, but simply that as a director she was obliged to explain all these pitfalls. Woo Ji-yoon waved her hand and emphasized that the choice was entirely in favor of Kim Hyun-soo, and she for her part would provide maximum support. She thought to herself that the guy had a very interesting approach, and she said that they had apparently decided on the project and promised that she would contact the production team of this film. She also warned that this most likely would not happen, but just in case, Kim Hyun-soo should have been prepared for the fact that he would not get the role. The next morning, a meeting was scheduled to take place at a cafe in Cheongmuro. The man sat at one of the tables and carefully watched an episode of a drama starring Kim Hyun-soo. For some time, the man watched what was happening in the frame completely emotionlessly, simply studying everything carefully. The man was the Blue Figure's director, and his name was Man Young-ho. After watching a few scenes, the director became mildly curious about what was going on. He was particularly intrigued by the main character. The actor's performance impressed Man Young-ho, and he wondered how the boy managed to hide such rebelliousness. According to Man Young-ho, the actor, the main character, was really interesting, but in his project he didn't quite fit in because of his eyes. The director thought that such a look from an actor in a romantic film could ruin the whole atmosphere, and it was impossible to use it in any way. I continued to watch other scenes. Director Man Young-ho decided that there were other good actors in the Sunrise Agency that he could consider. But I didn't understand how it happened that it was Kim Hyun-soo who found out about his projects, asked to audition, and what's more, personally insisted on participating. Soon they approached him and asked if he was the director Man Young-ho. Kim Hyun-soo appeared before him. The actor immediately introduced himself and smiled broadly welcomingly. Behind him was the director of his agency. When the director saw the actor, he was stunned by his appearance. He had imagined a completely different person until he saw him with his own eyes. He couldn't help but ask out loud how this was possible, and Kim Hyun-soo seemed like a completely different person. This introduction left Kim Hyun-soo a little perplexed. He was even at a loss and didn't know how to respond to this statement. Woo Ji-yoon, Kim Hyun-soo, and Man Jong-ho sat down at a table to get acquainted and discuss some details regarding the Blue Figure. Woo Ji-yoon spoke first, gesturing toward Kim Hyun-soo and emphasizing that, as agreed, they had not come today to discuss their participation in the project as the lead role. The director leaned his elbows on the table, apologizing for wanting to interrupt, and asked if he could ask one question first. Director Man Young-ho had a somewhat indifferent expression on his face, but nevertheless asked how actor Kim even found out about his project. The director admitted that he didn't expect actors to contact him at all, since the film was completely unknown, and that he himself was ashamed to admit that he too wasn't the most famous director. The director thought it was very strange for a dubious director to appear in a low-budget film. He says this without any sarcasm, though he was certainly flattered. Still, he was curious about the reason, as the project wasn't particularly profitable for an actor like Kim Hyun-soo. Kim Hyun-soo smiled in response and said that he simply thought the story was worth immortalizing. Director Man Young-ho noted that he was pleased to hear this, but he would still like to know a more reasonable reason. Hearing this, Kim Hyun-soo became a little indignant, and he had already said enough to continue discussing more important things regarding filming. Kim Hyun-soo was very dissatisfied and tried to quickly find the right words to put the director in his place and defend his dignity. After thinking for a moment, Kim Hyun-soo simply said Solar's name, which made the director jump slightly in place. There was also a scene number 97 when Sola was hugging a melting ice figure on a winter-spring beach. She gently touched the body of the ice figure. I understand that her touch destroys it. The girl cried loudly, realizing that her lover wanted to leave her again. She tried to understand why he had returned, suffering terribly from her pain. Well, the blue figure just stood on the shore and looked at her with its empty eyes without saying a word. With great difficulty, the ice figure of the man said that he had to do it. Kim Hyun-soo delivered his line. Turning to Solar, he assured her that he did it because she needed to move on. Kim Hyun-soo had to read this scene right away to convince the director that he should have included him in his project. Director Man Young-ho was stunned. He immediately noticed the emotion in Kim Hyun-soo's gaze, as well as a pause he hadn't written into the script. It was something unattainable and incomprehensible. This was the reason why Solo couldn't reach Gong-hoo. Almost immediately, the director's voice changed, taking on a tremor of excitement. He glanced at the actor and addressed him. The director was very confused, but at the same time he stated that he sincerely wanted to see Kim Hyun-soo in his film. Kim Hyun-soo and his agency director Woo Ji-yoon jumped happily upon hearing the news. It was truly wonderful for both Kim Hyun-soo, who was confident that he deserved to be cast in this project, and for director Woo Ji-yoon, who was obliged to do everything possible to fulfill the wishes of the actor under her charge. Director Man Young-ho asked them if they happened to know about what happened during the incident with the sinking passenger ship. Kim Hyun-soo was just researching the incident and also found information about Lee Jun-hyuk, the hero of his dream. Lee Jun-hyuk was 32 years old. He served as a marine rescue diver with the rank of staff sergeant. By then he was on vacation, but upon learning of the desperate situation, he selflessly rushed to rescue civilians. He ultimately rescued 10 passengers but went missing and was later declared dead during his 11th rescue operation. He was nominated for a national award posthumously as an exception and was declared fallen in the line of duty, and in short he became a true hero. But Kim Hyun-soo decided not to mention this to the director, saying that frankly, he'd never heard of the incident until he read the script. The director was upset but still agreed, as it was a fairly old tragedy and the actor's reaction was understandable. After this, the director said that he was making a movie using this incident as a basis. He then noted that, in fact, it all started with the loss of one person and placed a photograph in front of Kim Hyun-soo with an image of a sculpture on the shore. The director also noted that he couldn't reveal the man's real name because he wished to remain anonymous. However, the sculpture in the photograph was his work. He was the one who lost a loved one in the incident. Director Man Young-ho, as soon as he learned the story behind the sculpture, realized a lot and couldn't let it go. He realized that he had to turn it into a movie and he couldn't give up on the idea. Kim Hyun-soo, having listened to the director and felt all of this, admitted to himself that now he too could not refuse it. He had to tell the story hidden in the sculpture, otherwise he would not be able to find peace. Soon manager Go Kyung congratulated Kim Hyun-soo, calling him brother, with a mind-blowing 20% viewership rating. It was truly a celebration. Kim Hyun-soo was also encouraged by this news, but he was surprised when he managed to become a brother, and that the manager noted that Kim Hyun-soo was only a year older than him, which meant he was an older brother. Kim Hyun-soo agreed with this, and the manager returned to the fact that the views were at a 20% rating, which was truly a huge result. Exactly 1 month has passed since the release of When Darkness Absorbs, and its viewership ratings have only increased with each passing week. The outstanding performances of the actors, the excellent script by Gu Eun-ju, and the incredible charisma of the villain Lee Ji-won all contributed equally to the increase in views. The drama's relevance was supported by scheduled interviews with the actors playing both leading and supporting roles, and the manager decided to briefly talk about Kim Hyun-soo's upcoming interview. He said that they had drafted a short text for them, but since there was not much time to prepare, a pleasant text might not be necessary. The manager asked Kim Hyun-soo not to be afraid because it would not be a live broadcast but just a recording, which did not really calm the actor down. Kim Hyun-soo sensed this would be a major challenge. He had no experience giving interviews and was very nervous about saying the wrong thing. Having changed his clothes, Kim Hyun-soo entered the large hall where they were already waiting for him. Right from the doorway, he heard that they greeted him as Jaewon's colleague and were glad to see him. Ju Ina stood before him looking charming. She was dressed in a floor-length dress accessorized with jewelry, makeup, and hair. Kim Hyun-soo couldn't take his eyes off her. Ju Ina was truly beautiful in her role. Kim Hyun-soo froze in the doorway, his mouth even slightly open in pleasant surprise, and greeted his colleague, addressing her formally. Ju Ina was indignant, reminding him that they had agreed to communicate informally. She suggested that he was so confused because they had not seen each other for a long time. Kim Hyun-soo explained that the girl was simply very beautiful, and he did not know how to act, to which Ju Ina reacted very anxiously. She was afraid that she had gone overboard with the makeup, but Kim Hyun-soo practically fell in love with her when he saw her like that, and it seemed to him that everything about her look was perfect. He stood there confused, looking at Ju Inu, not understanding what was going on. The girl laughed, noting that she was an actress after all, and he should be used to her acting like that sometimes. Kim Hyun-soo still didn't calm down and agreed with her, which received a lot of indignation from her, and the question of what his opinion was until now. Suddenly someone came up to him from behind and hugged him tightly, which really scared him. It was Chon Do-seok, who immediately began asking Kim Hyun-soo if he had chewed well here. Jang Do-seok noted that in his opinion they should have had a drink and was indignant about where Kim Hyun-soo had been lately. I suppose that the newcomer no longer needed the guidance of such an old friend as he was. But immediately Chon Do-seok gave Kim Hyun-soo a friendly nudge, noting that it was understandable that such a young talent might not have time for communication. This behavior caused further indignation on the part of Ju Ina, who felt like a complete nobody. Jang Do-suk smiled at her, noting that he was also very happy to see their dear leading lady, although the younger one was still more precious. Ju Ina rolled her eyes and noted that this was a given since Chon had shot up the internet thanks to the newcomer. Ju Ina explained to Kim Hyun-soo that Lee Ji-won's shorts went viral on social media, and that because they were often on camera together, Jang Do-suk also became popular. Until this moment, Kim Hyun-soo was terribly nervous. And surprisingly for him, his fears suddenly evaporated as soon as he found himself in the circle of people he knew. He didn't understand why this was happening and decided to focus on where to start during the interview process since there was so much going on. Jang Do-suk walked forward with Ju Ina and began teasing her about how she had gotten all dressed up and was about to tell stories. He suggested that they just have a casual chat, quickly answer questions, and go out for a drink. She remarked that she was a professional actress and couldn't behave like that. Ju Ina turned around and seeing that Kim Hyun-soo was lagging behind, she extended her hand to him and asked him to hurry up and not hang around somewhere behind. Chon Do-suk supported the girl, noting that their young talent should go first, and pushed him forward. Kim Hyun-soo had trouble controlling his legs, which were shaking terribly with excitement. He felt completely lost, but he still took a step forward. Soon everyone gathered on the set and the interview recording began. Jang Do-suk was talking about her first meeting with Kim Hyun-soo at a reading when he pulled off an incredible performance. He rolled his eyes romantically, and I note that he still gets a thrill out of it when he remembers it. Ju Ina said that to be honest, at first she was torn by doubts about the choice of management, but then everything changed and she gave the trailer of the drama as confirmation. The host understood that, as expected, all the actors were industry veterans and wouldn't be easy to cast. She really wanted to draw out something more eccentric from them. He decided to ask them what they were thinking about their unusual popularity by turning to Kim Hyun-soo. Kim Hyun-soo smiled and said that he mostly sat at home and studied the scripts, which prompted me to ask him questions about preparing for the next script. Kim Hyun-soo realized that he had been caught, especially after the manager began waving his arms in all directions, trying to stop the young man and prevent him from saying another word. Go-Jen tried to make it clear as much as possible that there was no point in talking about the next projects, as this could cause problems. Kim Hyun-soo tried to get out of the situation. He quickly came up with something to say and replied that he really hoped that the next project would be the second season of When Darkness Consumes. The host's mouth dropped open in surprise, asking if the actor meant to say that the directors had already approved a second season. But Kim Hyun-soo laughed and explained that he simply wanted to emphasize how important this experience had been to him. The host was satisfied with this answer. He thought he'd gotten at least something worthwhile out of these actors. The director was also pleased. Soon the host asked all the actors a question and inquired what this project meant to them all. Ju Ina shared that she was very grateful for this work, which taught her the importance of chemistry between actors. Jang Do-suk replied that he clearly felt that his acting skills still had room to improve and smiled shyly. Kim Hyun-soo said that this project was his first large-scale filming. He admitted that this project was more of a ray of light in his career. The next day, Kim Hyun-soo went to meet his agency's manager and director. They met at a restaurant. The manager assured the director that Kim Hyun-soo had worked like a true professional. Go Jae-un even declared that their actors would have rocked any TV show. Kim Hyun-soo smiled and looked at the manager, noting that he should have thanked him, and that he had helped him a lot, which the director noted that in any case the young man did an excellent job for the first interview and promised that they would try to minimize unwanted media activity as much as possible. Taking up chopsticks, the director suggested returning to the reason for their meeting today, and noted that it concerned the details of an upcoming project which should have been discussed in advance. Kim Hyun-soo was very worried that some problems might arise, to which Woo Ji-yoon reassured him that it was not really a problem, although she looked quite upset. The director explained that there were simply some nuances which consisted in the fact that the production had already decided on the actress for the role of the main character. Kim Hyun-soo was surprised and asked who this girl was, but the director did not rush to answer. She very carefully asked the guy if she had ever heard of a certain actress, but she still couldn't bring herself to name her. However, the director noted that she was a guardian leader. Kim Hyun-soo knew nothing about this. He wasn't talking about the guards, much less their leaders. He looked at his director in surprise, not understanding what he was talking about. Woo Ji-yoon said that she expected the young man to be unaware and exhaled heavily. She said that it was not the most popular musical group, and it was not surprising that few people knew about them. Woo Ji-yoon noted that it was 7 or 8 years ago. A bunch of idols formed a music group, but they were soon forgotten. Their first album was a flop, so they reformed as a dance group and tried their hand again. The second album also flopped, and the company that sponsored it went bankrupt, after which the group members scattered, and with the exception of a couple, no one knew where they were now. Woo Ji-yoon noted that simply put it was a shameful failure, and now the main character, who was supposed to star with Kim Hyun-soo, was a former nameless idol. Hearing this, Kim Hyun-soo was completely shocked. His expression was difficult to read, and Woo Ji-yoon began to worry. The director went on to note that it wasn't that she was condemning the audition for the lead role of a failed idol, but the main problem was something completely different. But Kim Hyun-soo interrupted her and assured her that he now knew what the director was trying to tell him. Kim Hyun-soo glanced at her and said that of course he knew what she was talking about, since many in Korea had heard about the Guardians' disbandment. This sudden statement struck the director as even stranger. Kim Hyun-soo sang a few lines from one of the group's songs, which shocked the director even more. Woo Ji-yoon was worried that actor Kim hadn't completely sobered up since he was acting so strangely. Kim Hyun-soo clenched his fist, trying to contain his emotions, and noted that it was a fragment of the lyrics to Star Dream, a track from the Guardians' first album. Incidentally, it was simply a masterpiece of a solo by Sori, the backing vocalist and lead guitarist of the group. Woo Ji-yoon stared at Kim Hyun-soo with her mouth slightly open. She was confused. She initially took the actor's answer as if he had no idea what kind of group they were. Kim Hyun-soo, literally with tears in his eyes, said that it was his angels who helped him survive his long military service. When he said these words, Woo Ji-yoon and Gwajen were both seriously scared, not understanding what he was talking about. Woo Ji-yoon didn't know how to react to what she heard. She hadn't previously imagined that actor Kim had such a side. Kim Hyun-soo looked terribly upset, and after a short silence turned to the director, who with the same concern asked what he wanted to tell her. Kim Hyun-soo began talking about the actress who was cast for the lead role in The Blue Figure. Woo Ji-yoon once again stated that the main character was Sori of the Guardians, the vocalist and leader of the second generation, who was approved for the role of Solar, the main character of The Blue Figure. In general, now that the actors for the main roles had been approved, a script reading was supposed to be scheduled soon. After the casting was completed, The Blue Figure quickly began to gain momentum, and as director Woo Ji-yoon had predicted, a joint script reading was scheduled. As always, Kim Hyun-soo was one of the first to arrive and took a seat at the table. He looked over the script and waited for the other actors. The director entered the hall and noted that actor Kim had arrived very early, although this rather pleased him. Well, despite his joy, he was very surprised and asked how it happened that the main actor came first. In general, he was allowed a little more than the others. Kim Hyun-soo stood up from the table and, bowing her head slightly, greeted the director, who asked her not to do this, since the actor would have to bow all day anyway. The director looked at the actor's script and saw a lot of notes there, noting afterwards that actor Kim seemed natural and spontaneous, but in fact he was very meticulous. The director asked the actor to take his new lines before leaving, which he thanked him for, but the director noted that he himself should have thanked the guy for condescending to his film. Suddenly the doors to the auditorium opened again and an elderly woman entered. The director called her a teacher and was very surprised that she had made it alone again, as she should have leisurely boarded the bus with an escort. Kim Hyun-soo bowed again and introduced himself to the woman, to which she was slightly indignant and asked him to spare the old lady's ears. She noted that she was glad to meet him and introduced herself as So Yok, after which she noted that the young man was somewhat different from the images on TV, and she thought that he would be more frightening, but he turned out to be very nice. Seo Yok was renowned as an actress revered by young people throughout the theater industry. She was a veteran of the theater and beyond. A stunning actress with numerous awards both locally and internationally. Soon another man entered the hall and greeted the director with a slight grin. The director, seeing the man, also called him a teacher and was very surprised that he also came to the reading. The girl arrived next. She entered the hall saying she thought she'd be early, but it turned out she'd arrived in the last row and apologized for it. Bae Jiam Sik Young Chi-hoon, Oh Min-ji, Lee Ji-yun, Seo Ju-hwan and others were supporting actors and were somewhat famous in the theater or independent film industry. Soon all the actors had assembled. They sat down at a large table, picked up their scripts, and the reading began. The girl sitting next to Kim Hyun-soo suddenly turned to him and, noting that she had recently watched his drama, asked him for an autograph after cleaning. Several more actors responded, also wanting an autograph from Kim Hyun-soo, and someone wanted an autograph for their daughter. At that moment, the very last girl to enter the room regretfully noted that she was very late. Her appearance made Kim Hyun-soo nervous. He became nervous because the girl tripped and fell right there on the threshold. Her appearance was quite dramatic. Every single actor stared at the girl collapsed on the threshold. Everyone knew she was the main character. The girl and the Estonians began to rise to their feet. It was clear her landing hadn't been entirely pleasant, but her eyes still burned, although her face turned red from double shame. The girl sat down on her knees and bowed her head, introducing herself as Jong Iso. Kim Hyun-soo immediately jumped up from his seat and approached the girl, offering her his hand, which surprised her greatly. Kim Hyun-soo continued to extend his hand to the girl so that she could stand up and asked if she was okay. Behind his desk lay a script which he had already continued to study over and over again. The script opened on the first scene, where it was told that, with a face whiter and more beautiful than a sandy beach and eyes clearer than the sea itself in the port, she slowly found herself walking towards the horizon with a step that was smoother than the waves breaking on the piers. The description of the main character in the script was very different from how the actress showed herself at the first meeting. Jong Iso gently asked if she was too late and explained that she was playing the main character Solar and promised from now on to arrive on set before everyone else, hoping for the others' understanding. The girl walked across the hall and sat down in a chair next to teacher So Yek, who looked at her with a grin. The woman, despite the embarrassing appearance of the lead actress, thought that the girl was not just anyone after all. Director Man did not choose actors for the main roles thoughtlessly, and the girl apparently without any doubt was suitable for the role of the film's heroine. She looked at Kim Hyun-soo, also thinking that it would probably be very difficult for him. Seo Yok watched Kim Hyun-soo closely. She noticed how focused he was, how he carried himself, and how he spoke. She thought that this guy was like a hidden beast, and it would be a pleasure for her to watch how events unfold. The woman pulled the microphone standing on the table towards herself, and having stated her name, hoped that all the actors would work well together. Following her, other actors began introducing themselves until it was Kim Hyun-soo, who also gave his name and declared that he would be playing the role of Lee Gun-hoo and would try his best not to drag the project down. Soon the director introduced himself and hoped for a fruitful collaboration between the juniors and seniors so that the result would be an excellent work. A little time was given to discuss some details before we began. After looking around for a bit, the director finally suggested getting started and quickly running through the directions for the scene. The film opened with a scene in which Sola was frolicking on the beach with two friends, and the first line in it belonged to her. The girl read her first line, noting how cool the sea was. Kim Hyun-soo watched her closely and noted that she read her lines quite well. Solar was a sweet and charming character in the story, and the slightly awkward acting suited her spirit perfectly. Kim Hyun-soo thought that a normal performance might not have worked in this situation. So Yek read her line, indignant that the girls were playing on the beach in winter, and called them to quickly come into the house, which she had thoroughly warmed up. Another actress noted that the place they visited was even better than the photos. She didn't regret visiting it at all. Sola said with some sadness in her voice that this place had not changed at all and was still just as charming. Kim Hyun-soo didn't pay attention to the acting of the other actors but watched only the main character absorbing her acting into himself. Kim Hyun-soo believed that he had to fully understand the girl's personality, not just her character, in order for the game to be good. Looking at the girl, he did not understand why his character appeared before her, and whether out of guilt for the fact that his existence was so unexpectedly interrupted or only because of the desire to see her again. In his dream, Lee Jun-hyuk repeatedly jumped into the cold sea, freezing to death. He drowned, unable to return to her. From the very end, all that remained was the savage cold tearing his body apart. Kim Hyun-soo wondered if Gun-hui with his icy body felt the same way, and if his own body enveloped in endless cold was able to feel the warmth of his beloved again. He couldn't bear to see his beloved suffer. Kim Hyun-soo remembered every moment of his dream. He was once again the true embodiment of his character and remembered that very first touch of his beloved. Thanks to his dreams, Kim Hyun-soo seemed to live every line he spoke. It didn't take him long to quickly get used to the role. When it was his turn, he turned to Solya, his intonation already striking all the actors present. Just one word he said made everyone present in the hall freeze. Jong Iso jumped up in her seat and stared at Kim Hyun-soo. The girl couldn't utter a single word until the director called out to her and asked if something had happened. When the girl drew his attention to him, the director noted that it was time for her line. I was surprised that she was not following the script. She realized that she had missed this moment and immediately began apologizing, trying to find what she should have read. Didn't understand what had happened to her. This reaction was completely unusual for her. She was shocked that Kim Hyun-soo had simply addressed her by name and nothing more. But it made her so nervous. Her heart literally sank and everything inside her turned upside down. At that moment, she couldn't even imagine how her colleague's performance would affect her future work. The girl quickly came to her senses and read her line. She should have asked her lover if it was really him. But then she noted that apparently she got drunk and fell asleep, and that's why she now sees her lover in her dream. Lee Gun-hui pointed out that Solar didn't usually dream, implying that everything was real. He called her a fool who passed out after a couple of drinks and reminded her that he'd asked her not to drink unless he was around to take care of her. Sola looked into his eyes, realizing she had broken her promise. She also believed that it was truly her beloved who stood before her. Lee Gong-hui firmly said that he missed her very much, and it hurt him so much that he decided to drop by to see her. At that moment, Sola was completely convinced that it was none other than the man she madly loved. The atmosphere of the reading changed 180 degrees at that moment. The other actors couldn't tear their eyes away from the lead pair. Everyone was literally shocked by the performance of these actors and actresses who were completely new to the film industry. Many of those present felt how talented these actors were despite their little experience. Seo Yok got into character and yelled at the girl for being on the beach in the middle of a cold winter. The woman yelled that Sol must be tired of life if she was wandering along the cold shore in the dark after drinking. Another of the actors is quite crude when mumbling his lines, asking how many people are going to dinner and complaining that there aren't many briquettes left. Another actress invited Sola to her place, wishing to celebrate the end of their trip in a bright way. Director Man Young-ho kept correcting the actors, noting where they should have emphasized their lines and how they should have spoken them. He even asked some actors to try again, noting that the mood of the scene needed to be different. So Yok continued to watch Kim Hyun-soo the entire time. She literally couldn't take her eyes off him. She mentally admitted to herself that she was wrong because Kim Hyun-soo was not the kind of person who succumbed to influence. She also admitted that he was not an instinctive beast but a real predator. From the first seconds of meeting Kim Hyun-soo, So-yek was able to feel what kind of person he was and knew that he would achieve great success in the film industry. At the end of the reading, the director noted that everyone had performed well. And despite his grumbling, with or without reason, the actors had coped with their roles. Then the director turned to all the actors and asked what they thought the film should turn out like and whether it would be good overall. The actors paused for thought. Everyone had their own opinion on the matter, but not everyone wanted to voice it. Some people thought that they often only left a small part of what they could show for broadcast. And someone guessed that the director's secret weapon was not the main character Jong Iso at all. Before the reading, the actors had only one opinion. But after they saw Kim Hyun-soo's performance, they realized that they were very wrong. Looking at the main character, So-yek thought that if she could show at least a talika of the level of acting that actor Kim demonstrated, then there would be success. In this woman's opinion, only in this case could the film show outstanding results. The director soon announced that the reading for the day was over. He also added that he was sure some of the actors were looking forward to a dinner party. He didn't want to upset anyone, but he still had to announce that there would be no dinner, which upset many because it was the first meeting of all the actors and everyone wanted to get to know each other better. Director Man Young-ho admitted that he also felt very sorry and asked them to believe him, also noting that the actors themselves should have understood everything. He promised that they would find another opportunity to communicate before the official release, and that he would contact each of the actors separately through the agency to clarify the details. The final episode of the drama starring Kim Hyun-soo titled When Darkness Absorbs was released soon. This was the very episode where Ju Ina and Kim Hyun-soo showed incredible emotions and even a hint of feelings for each other. Manager Go Jen solemnly stated that the final episode had garnered 26.23% viewership, and with such figures one could fully expect an awards nomination, to which Kim Hyun-soo agreed. Go Jen suggested that Kim Hyun-soo might have even been awarded the Villain of the Year award, or at least the Promising Rookie award, but Kim Hyun-soo highly doubted he was at that level. The manager stopped at a traffic light, looked out the window, and immediately turned to Kim Hyun-soo, asking him to repeat what they both saw. There was just a row of girls standing on the sidewalk trying to take a photo of Kim Hyun-soo, all smiling and waving hello to him. The manager stopped the car to let Kim Hyun-soo get out and said goodbye, noting that they would see each other at the wrap party. Kim Hyun-soo opened the doors and put his foot on the sidewalk. Fans immediately ran up to him, loudly shouting their idol's name. Then came a swarm of journalists asking him to say a few words about the drama's finale. Among the crowd, he noticed Ju Inu, who called out to him and smiled. Kim Hyun-soo looked around and noted that this was apparently the same place where they had dinner last time, and that the girl was surprised that he did not know that the parties to celebrate the end of filming were always barbecues. The girl noted that in the past the cast and director celebrated separately, but now the boundaries have been erased, and since they are suffering together, they should not have separated. Out of nowhere, Jang Do-suk appeared and said that in fact in director circles there were still snobs who adhered to traditions. But their director Yu was certainly a little old-fashioned and did not particularly respect formalities. By this time, the director himself came out and immediately realized that Jang Do-suk had been telling everyone some nasty things behind his back. Gu Eun-ju grimaced a little and emphasized that he was the opposite of the force, and it turned out to be nasty things to their face, and later noted that in general outsiders were not allowed to come to them because everyone was their own, which was quite right. Then an argument broke out between them, which was already something usual. Director Yu took a glass and said that he was in any case very grateful to their dear screenwriter and the entire cast. He emphasized that everyone probably should have known that he had been experiencing difficulties lately as he had been pushed into the background, and thanks to his team it seems he was now able to try himself in a couple more projects. He turned to Kim Hyun-soo, pouring him some soju, and asked if he was still preparing to work with him. Gu Eun-ju, taking her glass, added that she would write a script specifically for him and that he should have left a window for it. The director expressed open resentment for the fact that they spoke in this way and again relegated him to the background. Chon Do-seok smiled broadly, noting that apparently Yu Young-suk's team was in the works. Kim Hyun-soo smiled and said that they could call him at any time and he would try his best to help, to which Jang Do-seok asked if he would have to beg someone who was no longer a rookie when that time came. And then he immediately asked if their actor Kim was already working on a new project, calling the film A Blue Fugue, which Kim Hyun-soo immediately corrected to A Blue Figure. Jang Do-suk noted that he had never heard of such a title before and was surprised that such a drama was even planned. Kim Hyun-soo explained that it was a film about an unfinished drama, which surprised Jang Do-suk even more. In his opinion, the young man had many more dramas waiting for him, and it was strange that he chose a film. He doubted that it was even worth doing, noting that their studio was soon supposed to take on a good project, and Yu Young-suk asked who the director of this film was. Kim Hyun-soo said that the director was Man Young-ho and it was supposed to be his first commercial film. I doubt that everyone knew this person. Director Yu noted that he didn't know such a director, but he definitely hit the jackpot, and noted that frankly there was a certain limit to how much dramas could reveal Kim Hyun-soo's acting potential, and even Lee Ji-won's character only showed one side. But then the director noted that he couldn't even imagine a romantic relationship, which both the screenwriter and Chon Do-suk agreed with. Twirling her glass in her hand, Ju Ina said with some sadness that in her opinion Kim Hyun-soo should have especially distinguished himself in this film. She said that actor Kim was really able to captivate his colleagues with his acting, which raised some questions from his colleagues. But the girl suddenly forced a smile, insisting she didn't mean anything special by it and reiterating her confidence in Kim Hyun-soo's success. The director found this answer too banal. Soon a huge cake was brought out and Ju-ina was invited to be the first to cut it. The girl walked up to the cake, took a knife, and stood up to carefully cut it into pieces. The evening continued with speeches from everyone who was connected with this drama. Many could not contain their emotions and burst into tears at the words of their colleagues. Gu Eunju noticed that even director Yu shed a tear and began to joke about it, to which the director sobbing replied that he simply could no longer hold back his tears. Soon it was Kim Hyun-soo's turn to say a few words. He walked to the center of the room and took the microphone. He addressed his dear colleagues and noted that everyone had already said a lot that he himself would like to say and warned that he would try to be brief. He said that he would be happy to work with each of those present on another project. Many looked at him and smiled. Everyone loved this man and his acting. His now close friends listened especially attentively to his every word and smiled. A month later, much had changed. Kim Hyun-soo was already busy with completely different matters. He had very busy days and was always in a hurry. Now Kim Hyun-soo communicated more with his new colleague Young Yae-so. He also had to communicate with the film's director. The conversation went quite smoothly. After a month of readings, rehearsals, and preparation, the first day of filming The Blue Figure arrived. The film's first shoot, which mostly took place on a winter beach, began near the end of summer in a cafe in central Seoul, and there was a reason for that. Today's scene was dedicated to Gong-hoo and Sola's past 10 years ago, reflecting their tender bond before he left her. Kim Hyun-soo burst into the cafe with a smile and greeted everyone from the doorway. Director Man Young-ho, as usual, was very relaxed and happy to see actor Kim and smiled back at him. He put his arm around the guy's shoulder and asked him to accept congratulations on the drama, which had become a hit, and that now there was an even greater burden of responsibility on his shoulders. The director admitted that filming hadn't even gotten to the point, but he was already extremely nervous. Kim Hyun-soo exhaled and apologized to the director, blaming the incident on the unpleasant questions from the media. Man Jong-ho was surprised that Kim Hyun-soo apologized to him. He smiled, noting that the director couldn't be angry at people who were interested in his work. He then explained that everything was already prepared for the children, and all he had to do was do his job properly. Sola, who had already arrived on set, joined the conversation and promised that she would also try her best. The girl, seeing Kim Hyun-soo, greeted him and remarked that he was quite early. Kim Hyun-soo smiled and agreed that he was indeed in a hurry today. The girl asked to be called by her first name only, as Kim Hyun-soo was now her mentor. But Kim Hyun-soo himself was a little embarrassed, as considering her idol career, it was unclear who was whose mentor. Man Jong-ho addressed the two of them, noting that they both knew that the scenes they had to film that day were mostly about Gun-hoo and Solar's past 10 years ago. The director said that they would frame these scenes as flashbacks in the film, so it was worth playing it as lightheartedly as possible, as if for a musical, and he asked if the guys understood what he was talking about. Kim Hyun-soo was speechless, but ISO asked if the director meant that the emotions in this scene were more important than feelings, to which he agreed, noting that the girl already had experience filming music videos. As I was about to leave the room, the director waved his hand at them and noted that the girl was absolutely right and warned that they would soon smoothly begin filming. When the director came out, ISO noted that he wanted more genuine emotions in the frame, or more simply unconstrained acting. The girl approached Kim Hyun-soo and noted that she understood perfectly well that the director's instructions might have been vague, but with the lead character's talent, it wouldn't have been difficult. Kim Hyun-soo assured him that he understood everything. The girl was surprised that he really understood everything, and Kim Hyun-soo smiled at her in response, noting that it was all thanks to her. ISO thought about his answer, not understanding how she could help such a talented actor. Kim Hyun-soo reflected that while he certainly had no experience filming music videos, he had watched the Guardians videos countless times during his military service. These thoughts came from memories of his dreams. Kim Hyun-soo took the script in his hands and, turning to ISO, noted that he would like to practice a little before the rehearsal and asked if the girl could help him. ISO really liked this idea and she happily agreed to rehearse together. Director Man Young-ho carefully watched them from the side and was pleased with how well they communicated with each other. After waiting a bit, the director clapped his hands, drawing attention to himself. He declared that they had to finish filming this scene before sunset, not suggesting they hurry up and start. Everyone immediately took their places. The sound of a movie clapperboard was heard and the work began to boil. There was immediate complete silence on the set. The blue window of the Café Sol was waiting for Gonghu, who as usual was late for a date with her. Although she noticed his appearance, she still continued to look out the window with detachment. Gonghu approached the table where Sola was sitting and asked permission to sit next to her, and the girl, without your gaze from the window, asked why he wanted to do this. Gonghu smiled and replied that he'd simply fallen in love with her at first sight. The girl chuckled and asked why he'd suddenly fallen in love with her, to which he replied that it was because he loved people with beautiful souls. Sola, trying her best not to look at him, asked how he knew that her soul was beautiful if he saw it for the first time. Gonghu smiled even wider and explained that this was exactly what he was going to find out, and sat down next to her. Sola clicked her tongue as she stood up from the table, indignant that she had actually fallen for those saccharine words a long time ago, to which Gonghu with the same smile replied that she had thawed under their influence this time too. Sola got up from the table and threw herself into Gonghu's arms, who hugged her tightly. He whispered in her ear and apologized again for being late. I know that she will definitely forgive him. Sola replied in a slightly dissatisfied voice that since he had come she could still forgive him. Gonghu hugged the girl tighter and said that he missed her very much. The scene was filmed and the cameraman immediately asked the director if he was happy with everything, but he didn't answer right away, being deeply thoughtful. After thinking for a bit, the director turned to actor Kim, noting that he wanted to ask something just out of interest. Having plucked up his courage, the director asked Kim Hyun-soo if he knew the actress Young before their filming, which greatly surprised the young man himself, who also did not understand how the director could even come up with this idea. The director explained that if they simply didn't know each other, he couldn't understand how they could produce such a facial expression on the first take. He asked them to review the piece he had managed to film. ISO turned away, trying to figure out what this could mean. She couldn't even guess. She felt the same thrill as during the script reading and believed that it was real acting. But she had stood on stage many times, but she had never felt the way she did next to Kim Hyun-soo while acting out their roles. She felt that there was something special about the actor Kim Hyun-soo that she had never seen in anyone before. She looked at him and carefully studied his emotions. She was clearly thinking about something serious. It seemed to her that he was unhappy with this level because she could not imagine anything else looking at him. The director also noticed this and decided to ask Kim Hyun-soo directly if everything was okay and asked her to answer only honestly. Kim Hyun-soo replied that it wasn't that he wasn't happy with it, but it seemed like he was stealing the show and that wasn't good at all. The director looked at him in bewilderment, thought for a bit, and asked what exactly the young man was talking to him about. But even without waiting for an answer, the director himself understood what was being discussed. He watched the shot again and stopped at the shot where Kim Hyun-soo was hugging Young Yeseo. After studying this fragment a little, the director agreed with Kim Hyun-soo that he had rushed it, to which he admitted that he himself was embarrassed to point this out. Well, director Man Young-ho praised him, saying that now he himself does not know who the director was on the set, but still the actor was absolutely right, and if he left it like that, problems could start later. ISO sincerely did not understand what the problem was, and after shifting from foot to foot for a long time, she finally decided to approach and ask what exactly was wrong. The director asked the girl to come closer and showed her the film take again. He pointed to a fragment where she was sitting by the window and noted the props, the interior in the shot, the composition as a whole, and asked who in her opinion was the main character. Jong Iso listened attentively to the director and finally began to understand what they were talking about with actor Kim. The director skipped the take a little further, noting that this scene from beginning to end was intended to highlight the main character Sola. The director looked at Kim Hyun-soo and continued by saying that all these directorial techniques were completely offset by the outstanding performance of another actor, pointing to Hyun-soo. Now Sola understood, seeing everything filmed from the side. She was very surprised. Kim Hyun-soo was very upset by this result because he knew in advance that he shouldn't have tried so hard. He made a mental note that it wasn't he who was doing the acting but Lee Jun-hyuk, both during the reading and on set. He thought the man had gone quiet and decided that was most likely the reason. Now it became clear to him what was causing the dreams of Lee Jun-hyuk to appear in his mind. It was Iso, or more precisely, he saw her character Solar as his beloved Hae-young. But the current situation was different from the dreams with Chon Ki-chun, whose emotions were something without color and smell, something silent. But Jun-hyuk's emotions were completely reversed. These emotions were excessive. Kim Hyun-soo understood what could happen if this continued. It wasn't just himself who was at risk but the entire film as well. Kim Hyun-soo understood that everything would be saturated with only Lee Jun-hyuk, the main character of his dreams. After filming, Kim Hyun-soo went to his home and was very thoughtful and depressed. He sat in his bed and reread the script over and over again, trying to catch what he thought he had missed. He was distracted from this activity by a telephone call which as always came very suddenly. He picked up the phone and the guy on the other end immediately said that if he wasn't filming tomorrow they could go for a walk and help his unemployed brother get a drink. Kim Hyun-soo was surprised, thinking the man was currently at work. The guy called him green. It's worth noting that all the actors were in one way or another conditionally employed. Kim Hyun-soo, after a brief pause, said he was just about to call. He received a call from Chon Do-suk, who was very surprised that actor Kim could call first and noted that apparently there was no need to ask the reason. Jang Do-suk smiled widely and asked if it was his acting that was the issue, confident that he would remain right about it. Jong Yaiso was at home on her day off. She didn't have much free time. She decided to take up yoga to avoid relaxation and to keep herself in good shape. But she couldn't shake off her obsessive thoughts. She wondered why actor Kim had such a serious face the last time they saw each other. She heard director Man Young-ho tell Kim Hyun-soo that she was a veteran of the industry who had been through a lot. The director insisted that she was not the kind of actor to worry about, and he said this with a smile. The director asked Kim Hyun-soo not to worry and focus on her acting. These words couldn't leave the girl's head, but she didn't understand what the director expected from her. She tried hard and gave her all on camera, but now she felt like she was doing everything wrong. She understood perfectly well that she was taken seriously, but she was plagued by doubts about whether she was really a real actress. She recalled a director once telling her she possessed a charm that hid everyone's gaze even when she stood still. With these thoughts in mind, she picked up the TV remote to watch something. She kept thinking about the director's words, and she realized he had meant anything but her acting skills. Utterly upset, she rewatched her music videos. She would like to truly become an actress who would be appreciated and respected for her skills. ISO replayed all the scenes that were filmed together with Kim Hyun-soo before her eyes, trying to find flaws in them. She didn't want to remain in the shadows. She wanted to be spoken to and spoken to honestly, focusing on her acting, not her pretty appearance. Focusing solely on work, ISO put off yoga until later, turned off the TV and began studying the script. At that time, in one of the bars at Sunset, Kim Hyun-soo gathered with his now friends. Chon Do-suk, without removing the smile from his face, said that now everyone wanted to get him in their projects, and for the first time he was so busy choosing a script. Ju Ina was dying of boredom and indignation, noting that apparently he invited his friends just to show off. Do-suk laughed loudly, not understanding what he could boast about in front of the two of them, and assured them that he simply wanted to thank them, to which Ju Ina said that he could no longer thank them and asked permission to leave, telling them about an important meeting tomorrow. Chon Do-suk asked her not to leave and to wait so they could discuss another topic. She snorted, noting that he apparently wanted to tell another self-deprecating story, but Do-suk declared it wasn't about him but about the actor Kim. Ju Ina looked at Hyun-soo and was very surprised, and Jang Do-suk noted that he had recently told him that they should discuss something. Kim Hyun-soo was a little nervous, but now it was time for him to speak. Having collected his thoughts, he laid out everything he wanted and waited with the same excitement for his friend's reaction. He put the glass on the table and assured everyone that everything was true. Ju Ina, looking at Kim Hyun-soo with a slightly confused expression, noted that his acting had indeed been disconcerting at first, while Do-suk emphasized that his co-star wasn't even a qualified actress but an idol, and that no other outcome could have been expected. Chon Do-suk thought to herself that Hyun-soo must have felt that his game partners were giving in to his emotions, and that this naturally put the entire project at risk. He leaned over the table a little and asked Hyun-soo if he thought his acting was too good, to which he replied that it wasn't so much the acting as it was the emotions of his character that he couldn't control. Chon Do-suk emphasized that this had already happened during filming when darkness was received. It seemed Hyun-soo wasn't at all surprised by his story. He noted that the boy was exactly the kind of person who'd been carried away by the current, to which Hyun-soo reminded him that he'd been told to recognize when it was acceptable and when it wasn't. Do-suk noted that Kim Hyun-soo had a very good memory, which somehow encouraged him. Ju Ina noted that, frankly speaking, his current experiences were the pressing problems of many outstanding actors, which greatly shocked Kim Hyun-soo. The girl emphasized that the ability to immerse oneself in a character delivering an explosion of emotions on cue was not given to everyone, and he did not yet realize what an incredible talent he possessed. She also added that for his co-star it was real torture, and when you meet someone so incredible in front of you it's even difficult to fall asleep. Ju Ina, seeing Kim Hyun-soo's surprised face, exhaled heavily, realizing that the guy had absolutely no idea what she was talking about. Having collected her thoughts, Ju Ina rudely declared that the one who should be worried about her acting was definitely not Kim Hyun-soo but Jung Lee-seo. For Kim Hyun-soo, this really sounded very rude and made him think seriously. Jang Do-suk grimaced and noted that his friend Hyun-soo seemed to be forgetting one very important thing. Hyun-soo glanced at him and asked what he meant. Chon Do-suk replied that he forgot about pleasure, and no matter what anyone said, the main thing in the game was to enjoy it. Chuk Do-sok advised him to remember the simple truth that the game was at its core designed for entertainment. He raised his glass, recalling the director's words about how only he needed to worry about his project and Hyun-soo was just his actor, and his task was to act and not to imagine anything unnecessary. With these words, the three of them clinked glasses and drank, and Hyun-soo reinforced in his thoughts that he should simply enjoy the game. During the next shoot, he tried to apply as much as possible what his friends told him. According to the script, Sola sat there frowning and even angry. The girl was indignant that her lovers always acted exactly like that. Lee Gong-hoo frowned in response and asked her to explain exactly how he was doing this. A quarrel broke out between them. Sola insisted that it was impossible to communicate like that, and even the question itself was unnecessary. She threatened that if he continued in the same spirit, she truly wouldn't want to see him anymore. She screamed that relationships weren't math and that there was no point in sticking to the formulas he kept harping on about. At this point, Gong-hoo couldn't take the heat anymore and started getting up from the table. But in his emotions, he decided to leave quickly to avoid continuing this conflict, and Sola shouted a warning after him that he shouldn't take any unnecessary steps, otherwise he would see what would happen. He turned slightly towards her and stated that he would do so from now on and asked what he should expect, to which Sola stated that in that case they would no longer be together. After these words, Lee Gong-hoo simply froze in place. Everything inside him was seething. He tried to exhale all the negativity and calm down. Slowly he turned to Sola, who was also on the verge of a breakdown and could hardly control herself. He showed his watch and noted that the food was already ready, and Sola herself said that she was very hungry. Sola looked at him, perplexed by what was happening and unable to respond. Still waiting for no answer, Gong-hoo asked if he was wrong. Sola frowned again and admitted that she was indeed hungry. Gong-hoo remarked that this was wonderful, and even if they weren't in the mood, they should have eaten first. The married couple who were sitting at the next table not far from Sola laughed, hearing such an absurd and at the same time touching quarrel of the young people. Sola shouted that she agreed to eat and asked Gong-hoo to hurry, to which he smiled without showing this smile to his beloved, and noted that the girl should first eat and then he could use his dirty methods. The girl again became indignant, to which Gong-hoo explained that he would use these methods to correct everything, and her dissatisfaction in particular. Sola couldn't find a response to this statement. She was taken aback by these words, but inwardly she admitted that her lover was right. At this point, the take was over. The director shouted for the actors to relax. The first thing ISO did was run to Kim Hyun-soo and ask him if he liked her performance today. Kim Hyun-soo felt awkward, as he'd already lost his train of thought the umpteenth time she'd approached him and asked the same question. ISO, on the other hand, admitted that his remarks had given her the creeps, and it was surprising she hadn't mixed up her own. She pointed out a few lines and asked if they had drunk anything, and that there was more expression in those parts, and asked how Kim Hyun-soo felt about her offended puffing, wondering if it came out okay. The director and videographer quietly laughed at him so that ISO wouldn't see it. ISO let out a heavy sigh and noted that just like on the first day, her performance was still not on par with Kim Hyun-soo's, and so she really practiced a lot on the weekends, although she understood that a couple of days was not enough to change anything. Well, she smiled, hoping out loud that she would do better on the second try. Kim Hyun-soo didn't know what to do with himself, and also didn't know how to gently answer all the questions of the girl, who apparently depended very much on his opinion. He remembered the words of Jang Do-suk, who strongly recommended that he just enjoy the game and not pay attention to anything. Kim Hyun-soo, remembering these words, smiled and called the girl by name. When she turned her attention to him, he asked if she liked his performance. This question came as a big surprise to ISO. This made her think. She couldn't answer the question right away. Well, apparently the girl was only pretending to be deep in thought, and a moment later she smiled broadly, and even gestured saying that his playing was absolutely inimitable. This was the last straw for Kim Hyun-soo, and he laughed loudly, turning away. ISO was indignant that he was laughing at her, and he realized that he probably wouldn't be able to get rid of this feeling so easily. Kim Hyun-soo realized that the very idea of surpassing his dreams was a failure from the start. His characters were once again not enemies he had to defeat, but merely building blocks for something greater. That's exactly how it was, and ISO was a living example of this before his eyes. He didn't initially expect much. Even if his outstanding talent was recognized, he was still a newcomer just making his debut in the film industry. Jong Eseo's acting skills had only been tested by a couple of small roles, and she was a newbie in every way. Director Man Young-ho believed there was no need for high expectations. He knew from the moment he cast them in the lead roles that he wouldn't be able to realize his vision 100%. So he set out to capture on camera how these raw talents were growing on screen, but they exceeded all his expectations. Now both of these actors were completely different from their former selves, and he couldn't really tell what the difference was. He watched all the shot takes over and over again, trying to understand what he was thinking. Each time he saw completely different characters right in front of his nose. The actors were funny, sad, angry. They could fool around in front of the camera and put on serious faces, and they always seemed to be themselves. But Jung's performance had grown incredibly during this time, and she now tangibly commanded attention. On the other hand, she had grown to the max, and now she was on par with Kim Hyun-soo in terms of presence. Just a couple of pieces of advice triggered this growth. Kim Hyun-soo not only improved himself but also caught up with Oleg in filming. He had an incredible ability to convey emotion, and director Man Young-ho couldn't understand how this young man could do it at his age. He believed it was instinctive, pure talent. He considered him a true monster. One of the beautiful scenes was when the main character Lee Gong-hoo proposed to Sol on the seashore. He smiled widely and sincerely, asking the girl to marry him. Sola was immediately touched, and covering her face with her hands agreed to his proposal at that very second. Lee Gong-hoo himself almost cried at that moment. He was incredibly happy. It was the end of the take, and the director immediately shouted enthusiastically that everything had been filmed. Blue Figure was supposed to be filmed mainly along the coast during the autumn-winter period, but things changed a little. After another shoot, Kim Hyun-soo met with the director of his agency, who began asking him how everything went. Kim Hyun-soo briefly replied that he had a lot of fun, after which the director apologized for not being able to make it to the filming even once and promised that she would definitely come to the next episode, which was supposed to be filmed in the fall. Afterwards, Woo Ji-yoon asked Kim Hyun-soo if she had gone out, or that he was now free until mid-September, which he confirmed with a smile. And for the key and most tragic moments, filming had to take place in the fall. The weather and even natural light, which could only be captured at this time of year, played a role. Without further ado, Woo Ji-yoon immediately explained that the matter was that Kim Hyun-soo received a couple of advertising offers during filming, which greatly surprised the guy. The director noted that 3 such proposals had been received at once and laid the papers on the table. Woo Ji-yoon admitted that she was also surprised, since it was quite unusual to invite an actor who played a maniac to an advertisement, and Kim Hyun-soo completely agreed with her. Woo Ji-yoon noted that this was further proof of his value in the eyes of employers, but at the same time there was a problem. She explained that after reviewing the proposals, she felt that they were not entirely suitable for his image. She continued explaining that this was precisely why the company had turned everyone down, and that he had decided to wait for suitable offers. The director was worried about how actor Kim himself would react. Kim Hyun-soo smiled at her and said that since she needed it first, he fully supported her and trusted her. The director was pleased and praised him for his good choice, noting that an offer would likely not be long in coming, as soon as he had filmed a couple more projects, and therefore it was worth waiting a little longer for the right moment. At the end of this conversation, Woo Ji-yoon took out another paper and noted that however Kim Hyun-soo would have something to do without advertising. She placed the paper in front of him. It was a proposal requesting an interview for a magazine. Woo Ji-yoon waited impatiently for his reaction. Kim Hyun-soo was surprised. It was a fashion magazine, and he'd read it in the army. This fashion magazine for men was a fairly popular monthly based in New York and published worldwide. It boasted the top-selling men's magazine and was simply unrivaled. Kim Hyun-soo didn't understand why he was invited and asked the director about it directly, and Woo Ji-yoon asked if he remembered the photo that Gina took of him. The photo actually turned out very well and was even hung on the wall in the main office. Woo Ji-yoon noted that apparently one of the magazine's editors noticed Kim Hyun-soo working with articles. Woo Ji-yoon explained that although the proposal stated that it was an interview, it obviously implied a photo shoot, and the brand had not yet been selected, but she would definitely have to dress up and choose accessories. Kim Hyun-soo thought for a moment and replied that he liked the idea of the interview. Woo Ji-yoon emphasized that even during downtime it would be nice to maintain the interests of the audience and asked whether Kim Hyun-soo agreed to this proposal. Kim Hyun-soo agreed. The director clapped her hands. I'm glad that their opinions about the work coincided, although I was surprised how well he understood her. Woo Ji-yoon asked him not to get worked up about the photo shoot and to treat it like a regular portfolio shoot. Kim Hyun-soo immediately remembered his last shoot with Gina, when she literally tortured him. The director noted that she almost forgot to mention that the interview would be a doubleheader with two major figures, and that in addition to Kim Hyun-soo, actress Choi Yumi would be participating. Kim Hyun-soo again felt the name sound familiar, but he couldn't quite place it. The director, seeing this, asked him why he was so lost in thought since he was an idol expert. Woo Ji-yoon explained that this girl was the main character of the acclaimed drama Princess in the Garden, and like Jung Seo, she was an actress who had previously been an idol. A week later, Kim Hyun-soo was preparing for an upcoming interview. He decided to watch the popular drama Princess in the Garden, which was abbreviated as PVS. It was a romantic comedy about the heir to a hotel and amusement park chain and a festival dancer who fall in love and overcome adversity. It was one of the most popular dramas. Go Jen noticed that it was Kim Hyun-soo who was looking and said that it might not have been as exciting as The Darkness, but it also had a place to be, and Choi Yumi was cute in it. Kim Hyun-soo saw that she had 10% ratings by just the 4th episode, which was a very strong result. Judging by the comments, most people unanimously believed that the drama owed its success to the cuteness and charisma of the lead character Choi Yumi. After watching the clip, Kim Hyun-soo remembered something very important. He remembered this girl in the time before he got on the set when Darkness consumes. He had a cameo role as clown number 3 in her drama, from which he was thrown out in disgrace. She was also an actress with an idol background like Jung Seo, but it was difficult to find people whose paths in the industry were so different. This girl, the nation's little sister, has been performing in an idol group since her school days, and being the core of her group, she caught the wave of success even before reaching adulthood. Having succeeded as an idol, she went on to conquer the heights of the film industry, and was now the poster star of Korea's top influencer agency, which has flourished ever since. Judging by the rumors, a war even broke out among the agencies because of her, and the winner was the one that paid her a tidy sum for signing the contract, but it was not a mistake and the investment paid off almost immediately. In other words, this girl was the very embodiment of stardom, and Kim Hyun-soo didn't understand why she was invited to an interview with a men's magazine. Yes, with his participation everything was clear. Kim Hyun-soo recalled the director's words, who said that they were the same age and hotcakes in the industry at the moment, and plus being a man and a woman, they made a rather harmonious couple. But Kim Hyun-soo remembered that there were constant problems with this girl, such as being late, unprofessional behavior, and bickering with the staff on set. Although Kim Hyun-soo understood that there was nothing more stupid than a prejudiced attitude towards someone with whom he had not even managed to properly talk. Before the interview began, he decided to put all his thoughts aside and just relax while the manager drove him to his destination. They arrived fairly quickly and stopped at a very large office where the interview was to be filmed. Before the makeup artist was amazed at what it took to prepare a person for a fashion magazine shoot. She immediately realized that she had to put in twice as much effort. The girl promised that she would definitely compensate Kim Hyun-soo for all the losses on the kimbaps and iced Americano that he bought her since he was a model and not an actor that day. Another girl came up next and did his hair and noted that Kim Hyun-soo was a real star, and the makeup artist emphasized that he was a star. The hairdresser suddenly froze and stared at him, examining him more closely. She realized that if it was a men's fashion magazine, then Choi Yumi had to be there that day. Kim Hyun-soo, hearing this, shrank a little in his chair. I don't understand how the girls knew about this. Well, they said they were certainly aware of it, as there was a huge uproar in the industry about it. But they were interrupted. A woman entered the room and in a stern voice began to complain about how much her employees could gossip while working. The girls noted that Hyun-soo's brother had the right to know about this, since he always bought them food and coffee, when he came over, to which the woman agreed. The girls also noted that the actress was no longer their client and that no big trouble could have happened but such gossip. The woman who entered was named Yeonji. She approached Kim Hyun-soo and asked him to remember one important thing for the upcoming filming. She warned him not to talk to that witch at all, meaning Choi Yumi.